Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that, we having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
This Honourable House now resumes its sitting. Call of the roll.
Mrs. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Samuda, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malou Fort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Terry Long, Ms. Smith, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown-Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Miss Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright.
Before we start the business of the day, may I use this opportunity to welcome all our visitors in the gallery, and I want to make special mention of the students and teachers who are here from Kingston High School, Denham Town High School, Tivoli Gardens High School, and the Charlie Smith High School. We want to welcome you all and to trust that you will find the sitting of Parliament informative. You can't participate, but you can certainly listen carefully and learn as much as you possibly can about how the government does its business. Statements by ministers.
Madam Speaker, there isn't intended to be a statement at this time. However, if the situation changes, I will seek the appropriate leave to allow for it to happen. So may it please you, Madam Speaker.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following. Annual report for e-learning Jamaica Limited for the year 2020-2021. Annual report of the Montego Bay Convention Center for the year 2018-2019. Annual report of the Anti-Dumping and Subsidies Commission for the year 2016-2017. The Public Procurement Amendment of First Schedule, Order 2022, and its resolution under the Public Procurement Act. The Conch Export Levy Rate of Levy, Order 2022, and its resolution under the Conch Export Levy Act. The Court of Appeal, Jamaica Annual Report for the year 2021. The Auditor General's Department Certified Appropriation Account for Head 2624 for the Ministry for the Department of Correctional Services for the year 2014-2015.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. The Public Procurement Act. The Public Procurement Amendment of First Order Schedule, Order 2022, Resolution. Madam Speaker, whereas Section 4.1 of the Public Procurement Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the methods of procurement and procurement process set out in Parts 3 and 5 respectively of the Act do not apply to any public procurement specified in the first schedule. And whereas, by virtue of Section 4.2 of the Act, the Minister may by order, subject to affirmative resolution, amend the first schedule to the Act. And whereas, as of today, the Minister made the Public Procurement Amendment of the First Schedule, Order 2022. And whereas it is desirable that the Public Procurement Amendment of First Schedule, Order 2022 be affirmed, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. 1. This resolution may be cited as the Public Procurement Amendment of First Schedule Order 2022 Resolution. And 2. The Public Procurement Amendment of the First Schedule Order 2022, which was laid on the table of this House on the 12th day of April 2022, is affirmed, dated this 12th day of April 2022. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice further that at a later stage today, the Minister of Finance will move for the suspension of the standing orders to allow him to take the motion. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, the Minister of Finance will move the following motion. The Conch Export Levy Rate of Levy Order 2022 Resolution. Whereas Section 3(1)(c)(2) of the Conch Export Levy Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Minister may, from time to time, by order, subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives, prescribe the levy to be paid to the Veterinary Services Division by exporters for any conch season after the 2010 conch season. And whereas, on the 7th day of April 2022, the Minister made the conch export levy rate of levy order 2022. And whereas it is desirable that the conch export levy rate of levy order 2022 be affirmed, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. 1. The resolution may be cited as the conch export levy of rate of levy order 2022 resolution. And 2. The conch export levy rate of levy order 2022, which was laid on the table of the House on the 12th day of April 2022, is affirmed. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, the Minister of Finance will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable him to take the motion. May it please you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. And this, of course, is, again, Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance. The monetary policy statement covering the second half of 2021, which is contained in a letter from the Governor of the Bank of Jamaica, dated February 23, 2022, regarded as the 2021 Bank of Jamaica Quarterly Monetary Policy Report, Volume 22, Number 2, dated November 2021, and the 2022 Bank of Jamaica Quarterly Monetary Policy Report, Volume 22, Number 3, dated February 2022. Which were laid on the table of the House on the 17th day of March 2022, be referred to the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives, consisting of all ministers of the House for consideration and report. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, the Minister will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable him to take the motion. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business.
Madam Speaker, today it is our intention to continue the sectoral debate. The Honourable Fayval Williams, Minister of Education and Youth, will be our first speaker, and she will be followed by the Member of Parliament for East Kingston and Port Royal. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, I choose to live with gratitude and the voice of hope that says, all things are possible. As I rise to make my contribution to the sectoral debates, I do so, Madam Speaker, with a sense of gratitude knowing that I have been granted this privilege to play a part in the continuing transformation of the education system for the betterment of the children and youth of our nation. Madam Speaker, I do not take lightly the opportunity to say thank you to family, in particular my husband and our 2 daughters, and the multitude of siblings and relatives who are never tired of providing support and encouragement for me, rain or shine. Madam Speaker, I acknowledge with deep appreciation the support of the Prime Minister for his trust and confidence in allowing me to lead this important ministry. Its work is fundamental to the progress which we will make as a nation. I'm even more committed today than that first day when I responded to the call to enter representational politics, and I am determined to ensure that all of our students, not just some, are on the path of academic excellence and economic prosperity. Madam Speaker, I also take this opportunity to thank my management team, the worker corps, my support staff, and the people of St. Andrew Eastern for their confidence and continued support as we navigated the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. I want to say thank you as well to the Ministry of Education and Youth. The past 18 months have been unlike anything we have seen before as we lived with the COVID-19 virus. It was not easy to provide service for the approximately 40,000 employees while seeing to the imperatives of our students. The efforts of the Permanent Secretary, the Chief Education Officer, Deputy Chief Education Officers, Regional Directors, Senior Education Officers, school boards, principals, administrators, the work of the Central Ministry and its regions and agencies kept the majority of students learning, teachers teaching, and the apparatus of education going during the pandemic. Collectively, you continue to work for the good of our children as we continue to streamline and create operational efficiencies at the ministry. And so I say the work you do will shine through in the months ahead. Thank you. Special acknowledgement as well to our many other entities that comprise the portfolio of the ministry: University Council of Jamaica, our accrediting body; Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission, the first stop for registration of tertiary institutions; Council of Community College of Jamaica, who is integral to our Sixth Form Pathways program; the Jamaica Library Service, and we're coming to you shortly to roll out an exciting program to get our children reading; the Overseas Exam Council, that entity is going flat out, helping us with digitizing our records; and of course, the National Education Inspectorate. Let me acknowledge as well all our tertiary institutions who did all that they could to keep our tertiary students engaged with their education as well. And let me recognize the students who are here this afternoon. Welcome to the Parliament of Jamaica. Today, Madam Speaker, I anchor my sectoral presentation to that of the Most Honourable Prime Minister's, which was entitled Sowing Seeds for Peace, Opportunity and Prosperity. One of those seeds is education and skills. The foundation, says the Prime Minister, on which all our aspirations of peace, opportunity and prosperity depend. I do wholeheartedly believe, as the Prime Minister said, our hope of reaching to that place of peace, opportunity and prosperity will depend on the quality of education and its alignment with future job market, the restoration of societal values, and addressing long-standing issues of equity in our education system. Madam Speaker, we know in our minds exactly the future that we would have if all of our students have a good quality education, and that education is aligned to the future job market. We know in our minds exactly the future we would have if we restore societal values and minimize the inequity in the education system. But it is not enough to know in our minds only. We have to do the work to make it so. I commit the Ministry of Education and Youth to the steadfast day-in, day-out execution that is needed to solve these issues. Madam Speaker, having returned our students to full face-to-face classes on March 7, 2022, the first order of business has been recovery. We know that while technology helped the majority of our students in the virtual classrooms, we also know that many of our students were not engaged on any of the platforms, and that the learning loss is beginning to show itself fully as we return to face-to-face. We have therefore started the recovery process. In our schools, we have had just about a month of full face-to-face. We're pleased to note that the majority of our educators have welcomed the move. The results from a JTA survey showed that 86.5% of educator respondents found teaching online more demanding. The survey also found that 91% of the respondents rated the level of preparedness at their school as either fair, good, very good, or excellent. Yes, there was hesitation among some schools. Some called for more time to get ready. Weighing all the factors, we made that transition back into face-to-face classes fully, and from all indications, that was the right decision for the education sector. The gratitude of our children has been reflected in the many pictures we received. Parents are happy as well. Many friendships have been rekindled all across our schools as students see their friends again, something we sometimes take for granted. The pandemic showed all of us how life-giving is our physical interactions with each other. Across the government-sponsored portion of the early childhood sector, comprising the Brain Builder Centers for children in the 0 to 3 age group, infant schools and infant departments, these institutions are also open for face-to-face. So too are the hundreds of privately owned and operated community daycare centers and basic schools. The Early Childhood Commission, led by the effervescent Trish Williams-Singh, continues to work to ensure full recovery, full accounting and support for our children. 3,355 early childhood institutions comprising brain builder centers, infant schools and infant departments, community basic schools and daycare centers are back in the face-to-face mode. Our field officers have already visited approximately 1,422 of them to offer support, and the work continues. Madam Speaker, we had indicated during the midst of the pandemic that approximately 120,000 of our primary and high school students were not showing up online or using any of the other modalities provided for their education during the pandemic. Prior to returning our students to full face-to-face, we launched our Yard-to-Yard Find the Child initiative, which engaged 108 social workers and 580 of our HOPE students at a cost of $103 million for a period of 3 months. Added to this initiative were the efforts of 928 guidance counselors and our 177 deans of discipline for a total of 1,793 persons. Add to this the many principals, teachers, and administrators and ordinary Jamaicans who joined the effort and reached out to parents and community members to re-engage our students in the face-to-face setting. Using a weekly average of 32,554 unaccounted for students over the period February 14th to April 1 shows that we have been able to re-engage approximately 87,446 of the 120,000 students we had indicated were not accounted for during the pandemic. Madam Speaker, we commit to finding all our students. Our deans of discipline and our guidance officers will specifically redouble their efforts. We also call on all Jamaicans. You know these children in your communities that are not attending school. call us at 211. Our internal officers and eventually our truancy officers will visit homes to understand the issues why the children are not in school. Together with our Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, and with the help of other sister ministries, we commit to doing all we can to help the situations in the homes and get our students in school and learning again. And let me just pause to acknowledge the work that Honorable Minister Nestor Morgan did while he was at the ministry to get this number set up, the 211 number set up to report on child abuse. Madam Speaker, like the shepherd in Matthew 18, verse 12, we, the Ministry of Education and Youth, must go to look for even that one that wandered off. We are not willing that any of these little ones should perish. Madam Speaker, every child has a right to education. Parents are required to ensure that their children are in school, and failure to do so is tantamount to educational neglect. Ministry of Education and Youth has made provision for children from early childhood to secondary levels to access full-time education. Too many children are absent from school on a daily basis. Jamaica's absentee rate is above the world's average. In 2022 into 2023, we will work to reduce absenteeism by at least a half of the current rate. Madam Speaker, even as we continue to find and re-engage absentee students, for those who are in school, we continue to assess them so that we can ascertain their levels of learning and also help them to move to the next level in their education or the world of work. In that regards, Madam Speaker, we're happy to note that approximately 35,900 grade 6 students prepared for and sat their primary exit profile ability test on Thursday, March 24, demonstrating their resilience. In consideration of the impact of the pandemic on learning for our PEP students, we reduced the content areas to be tested, canceled a component of the assessment for the grade 6 students, and also delayed the date of administration for the PEP ability test to give the students more time to prepare themselves. Additionally, our schools convened PEP camps for the students and teachers and prepared and distributed practice questions. Several psychosocial sessions were also held. Grade 6 students are now scheduled to sit the curriculum-based test in language arts and science on April 27 and in mathematics and social studies on April 28 of this year. Our students and teachers have been preparing, and public interest in the matter is high. We know this because our websites have been getting significant traffic as teachers, parents, students, and other interested persons seek information. Over the past 12 months, there have been approximately 750,000 visits to our website. Our top 10 hits include our mathematics lesson plans and the National Standards curriculum. Madam Speaker, our grade 11 to 13 students were also enabled to be engaged in face-to-face learning environment almost from the start of the academic year. To ensure that they were not at a disadvantage, the ministry continued to provide examination subsidies for up to 5 CSEC and 3 CAPE subjects, and access to a skill subject offered by NCT VET and City and Guilds. We also offered dual subsidy for maths and English at CSEC and City and Guilds to ensure every opportunity for success and that is maximized. Madam Speaker, the ministry continues to support all our schools with additional grants over and above what we would normally provide. With the resumption of full face-to-face, we made available an additional $435.6 million to help our schools purchase sanitization material and additional desks. Madam Speaker, we are grateful to the Ministry of Health and Wellness, which provided our schools with 400,000 masks and 5,000 COVID-19 test kits to augment the response plans at our schools. We're still encouraging mask wearing because we're not out of the COVID fog just yet. Additionally, through the efforts of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Via its consul in New York, we recently received 980,000 packs of FDA-approved antiseptic wipes valued at 84.5 million Jamaican dollars. We thank all our stakeholders who have come on board to help during these COVID times to provide tablets, laptops, wipes, books, and other supplies for students. We truly appreciate your support. You are helping our schools prepare for any likely challenges in the months ahead. Madam Speaker, I turn now to an important concern that we all have, and that is learning loss because of reduced access and time away from the familiar environment of face-to-face classes. We provided our schools with a suite of diagnostic tests for grades 1 to 9 from as early as September of last year. Since then, other school-based formative assessments designed to monitor student learning have been administered as well. This is an ongoing activity which will be provided to all students as they return to face-to-face. Having done these assessments, schools are expected to develop their intervention plans using the National School Learning and Intervention Framework, NSLIP, which has been developed by the Ministry to guide curriculum management for schools. The National School Learning and Intervention Framework includes extra teaching time for students through summer school and extra lesson homework programs, psychosocial engagements, parental engagement, strict monitoring of attendance, provision of digital learning resources, a robust accountability framework, and focused on customized learning based on assessment data. Our schools are being assisted by technical teams, including student support coaches, special education officers, curriculum officers, national numeracy and literacy coaches, and community relations officers to implement the plan, to track progress, and to address learning challenges. Through these approaches, school leaders will be better able to make crucial decisions about teaching and learning to get students back on their learning tracks. Madam Speaker, to date, 6,074 students are making the best use of our online extra lesson classes, and 11,926 students have registered and are now engaged in the face-to-face extra lesson classes at both primary and secondary schools. I use this opportunity to encourage our students and parents to take advantage of this extra lesson support at no extra cost or no cost to the parents, as it is through extended learning opportunities that we will begin to make up for the learning loss. Madam Speaker, just to recap, our learning remediation plan calls for customized learning guided by assessment data. This is school-based and is supported by our curriculum specialists. We're using special education services, learning platforms, and resources prepared by the Ministry, by our educational service providers such as One-on-One, the Learning Hub, and Edufocal. The Learning Passport, as well as the functional literacy and numeracy programs provided by UNICEF. This should ensure that the gaps identified in what students should know based on their grade level is the focus of the lessons towards getting the students back on their learning track. Our math and literacy coaches have targeted underperforming schools as per the diagnostic test and other national assessments dataset. Additionally, Madam Speaker, as part of the learning recovery, we will continue our efforts at capacity building training for teachers in teaching the national standards curriculum, with a special focus on strengthening the curriculum implementation teams at the school level. This should ensure that all key stakeholders are aware of the national standards curriculum and that our teachers maintain fidelity to the standards, that the curriculum standards and objectives are clearly understood and are appropriately reflected in the unit plans, the lesson plans, and formative and summative assessments, and that post-training expectations are met through improved monitoring and accountability frameworks. Our regional education officers and curriculum officers are being retooled and have begun to employ the team approach to supervision, making use of pre-conferencing, using the NEI data, assessment data, operations data, blanketing and post-conferencing exercises to ensure school and learning targets are met. The officers are set to have an upcoming intense 3-day planning exercise in the 4th week in April, with a focus on our 240 schools that are ranked as unsatisfactory by the NEI. The officers are more data-driven now and are working with a greater sense of intentionality and a renewed thrust for improved accountability. We will see an increased presence of our technocrats in our schools to offer the required hand-holding to ensure fidelity to our national standards curriculum and to the learning needs of our students. We will also continue providing lesson plans to reduce the administrative demands on our teachers. This will give teachers more time to focus on customized learning and assessments. We have over 500 lesson plans in our lesson plan repository. The goal is to have lessons for all subjects and all grades, and already we're seeing many of our teachers access these lesson plans. Madam Speaker, psychosocial sessions are also going through weekly scheduled guidance and health and family life classroom sessions, along with individual, group, and family counseling. We encourage our schools to make referrals to our service providers as the need arises, through the guidance clinics, Rise Life Management, and Peace and Justice Centers. Madam Speaker, we recently intensified the psychosocial and socio-emotional efforts by launching the Psychosocial and Socio-Emotional Learning Weeks under the theme, Embracing a Winning Well-Being. This has been running from April 6 to 13, and again April 25 to 29, and is especially focused on treating with the recent violence in our schools, because we know the solution to violence in schools is not just about using metal detectors and doing searches. Special focus is also being given to individual, group, family, and grief counseling, spiritual and motivational empowerment, coping with stress and trauma sessions, mental health training, conflict management, decision-making sessions, among others, whilst making use of art therapy, music, drawing, poetry, drama, talk therapy, among others. It is the whole person, the whole student with which we have to treat. All told, Madam Speaker, the government's recent investment in mitigating the learning loss has been in excess of $1.5 billion. This figure does not include our continued support of online media platforms and educational resources, which is $1.2 billion at the primary level and $1 billion at the secondary level. Madam Speaker, we know that it is not enough for schools simply to reopen their doors at what appears to be the end of COVID-19. Students will need tailored and sustained support to help them readjust and catch up after the pandemic. In this regard, Madam Speaker, we continue to benefit from the support of international partners such as UNESCO and UNICEF in our efforts to provide quality education through technology and capacity building of teachers. UNICEF is supporting literacy and numeracy development through increased student access to learning resources. UNESCO has provided training and the sharing of lessons learned from addressing the COVID pandemic in various jurisdictions. They've also facilitated several workshops to improve the use of technology in teaching. We want to thank as well the IDB and the World Bank for their technical and financial support in many areas, specifically in helping us with platforms and analysis of the vast amount of data generated in the education sector. IDB will also be working with us to digitize our learning resources as well. Madam Speaker, unfortunately, with the return of face-to-face classes has come an upsurge in violent behavior in our schools. To all our parents who have lost a child or children during the pandemic due to COVID illness or COVID depression, violence in school, the home, the community, or motor vehicle accident, we extend our heartfelt condolences. We offer our prayerful support to you, your families, and communities. We're working in meaningful ways to minimize and ultimately eliminate this scourge that robs the nation of valuable members of future generations. Madam Speaker, a few of the measures undertaken in this regard include the conduct of audits of the handheld metal detectors that were provided to all schools. Guided by the findings of the audit, a program of replacement of defective devices is being undertaken. A similar audit is being done for the 27 high schools that were provided with walk-through metal detectors. Another 9 are being installed in selected schools. Searches aided by the use of these technological devices. Schools resume searches of our students on entry and randomly throughout the day. Madam Speaker, we have given schools a safety and security policy document, and we expect that schools will abide by the procedures, especially as they relate to searches. The policy document describes what is a search and under what conditions they can have searches. Some schools will be getting CCTV surveillance systems to improve school safety and security. Also, we're working closely with our partners to improve safety and security within our schools. These include the Community Safety and Security Branch of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, not only to support our schools to conduct searches, but also to improve the visibility of the police in targeted spaces after school and at transport centers. We're working with the Ministry of Justice to provide restorative practices training to teachers, student leaders, and parents as a tool to manage conflict. We're working as well with the Ministry of National Security to provide case management services to students, particularly those attending schools located within or serving the zones of special operation. We're working with the National Council on Drug Abuse in response to the increased use and confiscation of drugs since the full resumption of school. We highlight as well the 55 additional school resource officers from the Jamaica Constabulary Force who are being deployed to our schools under the Safe Schools program in the police area, which consists of Trelawney, St. James, Hanover, and Westmoreland. Madam Speaker, we've given schools a safety and security policy document, and we expect that schools will abide by the procedures, especially as they relate to searches. Principals, vice principals, school administrators, and staff are asked to be on high alert for loud talking beyond what is normal, rough play, gathering of students on the outside of classes, especially during breaks and lunchtime, and we ask that they disperse these gatherings. School leaders, middle managers, and teachers have been asked to encourage students to play their part by taking personal responsibility for their safety and security, walking in groups when journeying to school, avoid walking alone at other times, avoiding shortcuts when journeying to and from school, avoid loitering in shopping centers, bus parks, and other public spaces after school, avoid exposing their cell phones and other valuables while at school or on the way to and from school, avoid being a target, and students reporting what they knew. Madam Speaker, we expect those actions that we outlined will reduce the incidents. However, we are intent on engineering a change in the mindset of our children. That is where long-lasting change begins. In response to these challenges, our principals, our guidance counselors, health and family life teachers, and deans of discipline are collaborating to implement the psychosocial and socio-emotional learning activities. We have developed a model that was shared with all schools, and we ask that the focus be given to our high schools, and in particular our fourth form students in this first round of these psychosocial and socio-emotional learning activities. Why our fourth forms? Since the resumption of full face-to-face classes this year, several of our high schools have come to national attention with fights and stabbings. And there has been the very unfortunate stabbing death of Kamal Hall of William Knibb Memorial High School. We mourn as well the death of 15-year-old Canute Williams from Papine High School, who was shot and killed on his way to school in a reported robbery attempt. We're focusing on our fourth formers because The data is suggesting that the COVID-19 impact is greatest on them. Our current fourth form students had their first year of high school, which was grade 7, in September 2018 to June 2019. So they would have missed approximately 1/3 of their second year, which was grade 8, or second form. They missed all of their third year, which was grade 9, or third form. They've already missed about half of their fourth year, which is fourth form. Madam Speaker, the typical grade 10 student is about 15 years old, just entering adolescence. Madam Speaker, almost 2 years of a structured school learning environment have gone, and almost 2 years of building friendships have gone. The typical grade 10 student or fourth former is entering the teenage years, 15 to 17. Psychologists say this is a time of change for how teenagers think, feel, and interact with others, and a time of change for how their bodies grow. This is also an important time to prepare for more independence and responsibility, especially for boys, and it is scary. It is a really, really rough time mentally for our grade 10 students in particular. Madam Speaker, having come to this understanding, we commenced an intervention and will continue this during the month of April. Schools have the flexibility to replicate and adapt this concept as the need arises. Limited academic classes will be held in those 2 weeks. We want to focus on providing psychosocial support to our fourth form students or grade 10 students, primarily to help them through this period. Even while we continue to use measures that include suspension for fights, metal detectors, additional resource officers, Madam Speaker, we recognize that our students need some heavy-duty psychosocial support to begin to see a greater level of socio-emotional intelligence, competencies, and skills that will enable our students to manage their emotions, thus get into that state where they can resolve conflicts without violence. So, Madam Speaker, this is a good time to highlight character education. This was a focus area in my sectoral presentation last year, in which I said character education would be institutionalized in all our schools. Madam Speaker, the ministry, in ensuring that the right values and attitudes are inculcated in our children and youth, has embarked on the development of a character education program. In June of last year, we established a broad-based task force, and I want to recognize the members for the many hours they devoted to helping us to understand what is character education, what does it look like, how do we implement it. The character education task force includes professionals such as Dr. Michael Abrams, a gynecologist by profession and chair of the task force, former Governor General Sir Kenneth Hall, child psychiatrist Dr. Ganesh Shetty, Dr. Rosemary Johnson, psychologist and lecturer at UWI, Dr. Abigail Harrison, pediatrician with special interest in adolescents and adolescent psychology, consultant in the Department of Psychiatry, UWI, Dr. Safari Longmore, Dr. Herbert Gale, anthropologist, international education advisor from EduQuest International Incorporated, Dr. Avis Glaze, Mr. Julius Gunter, strong advocate for adverse childhood events awareness and an author of children's book, Ms. Rebecca Tortello, education specialist, UNICEF, educator, Dr. Renee Rattry, human rights advocate, Diocese of Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, Mr. Sean Major Campbell, education psychologist Renee James, representative of the National Student Council, Jamaica Teachers Association, representatives of the clergy, and the Guild President, University of the West Indies. Technocrats from various agencies or divisions of the ministry are also on this task force. A series of presentations covering topics such as adverse childhood experiences, anthropology of social violence, adolescence, child psychiatry, school-wide positive behavior and intervention support, character education and formation, were some of the presentations that we received. A character education diagnostic study served as a basis to inform the program development. The recommendations from the study were reviewed and a detailed chronology outlining the steps to be made towards effective implementation is being undertaken. Madam Speaker, In addition to what we're doing in schools, I draw your attention to the government's commitment to a holistic approach in addressing the issue of violence against children, which is reflected in a number of actions, including the National Plan of Action for an Integrated Response to Children and Violence, which provides a coordinated and structured approach to addressing the key issues and challenges pertaining to children as victims, perpetrators, and witnesses of acts of violence and abuse. Also, the National Commission on Violence Prevention operates on the principle that violence prevention is most effective when it begins at an early age. Parenting support and early childhood development are critical investments in violence prevention. We are determined, Madam Speaker, to reach our parents this year. Our entity, the National Parenting Support Commission, the Ministry of National Security, and our Central Ministry have come together to reach 97,000 parents. This joint effort has already produced 2 of 30 targeted fairs, and the National Parenting Support Commission, already through various activities, has been able to reach over 50,000 parents. We know, based on many different research results, that the most accurate predictor of academic achievement is not socioeconomic status, nor how prestigious the school is that a child attends. The research says that the best predictor of student success is the extent to which families encourage learning at home and involve themselves in their child's education. When parents are engaged in their children's school lives, students have the home support and knowledge they need to not only finish their assignments, but also develop a lifelong love of learning. Madam Speaker, to help direct the energies of our students in meaningful activities, we will emphasize the uniform groups in schools as our students are now back in the face-to-face modality. Following our audit to identify all the uniform youth groups in school and the number of students engaged, a strategic plan has been developed for the next 3 years, which includes an action plan to guide the expansion efforts of the youth groups. We've taken a special focus on uniform youth groups operating in primary and secondary schools in the 5 areas declared as zones of special operations: Augustown, Greenwichtown, Denhamtown, Mount Salem, and Norwood. An audit was also conducted which revealed that there are 15 primary and 10 high schools located in the ZOZOs which require intervention measures due to the behavior of some of our students. The audit also revealed that 5 uniform youth groups have a strong presence in the schools identified. As partner in the Citizen Security Plan, which includes the interministerial 25 school strategy, focused attention will be paid to school governance, leadership and management, student development, school infrastructure, and community-level intervention. The ministry is also committed to include an additional 9 schools located within or serving the communities of Parade Gardens, Kingston, and Savannah-Lamar, Westmoreland, the 2 additional zones of special operations to benefit from this strategy. Madam Speaker, in assessing the violence in schools, the root causes, and the intervention plans to bring to bear on them, our efforts will be futile unless we understand the environment from which our children come. And I want to thank again the many professionals from the Character Education Task Force who really increased our understanding of the science behind adverse childhood experience, ACE, and the need for many of our parents, the adults and guardians in our home, to have a paradigm shift from blame, shame, and punishment of our young children to understanding, nurturing, and healing. Importantly, it's for the Ministry of Education and Youth to begin to have our educators in our classrooms and teaching colleges understand what is trauma-informed teaching, which starts with an awareness of how trauma can impact learning and behavior. The experts tell us that with this approach, our educators will think about what students' behavior may be telling them, and in so doing, they will find ways to better support students who may be experiencing trauma. The professionals say, Madam Speaker, trauma is intense sources of stress that many children experience, which can come from poverty, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, community violence, and corporal punishment that is still practiced in many homes in Jamaica. We know as well that these sources of stress can lead to drug addiction, violence, and other harmful behaviors that play themselves out in our schools. Yes, Madam Speaker, we understand that it is not just the metal detectors, random searches, and more resource officers, which we deeply appreciate, Dr. Chang. It has to be a fundamental shift for which our schools have to play an enormous role. Between April 2021 and March 2022, 12,642 cases of child abuse came to the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA. Add to this the many unreported instances of slapping, beating with an implement, pinching, and the psychologically aggressive methods of quarreling, shouting, denying food, swearing, cursing, and you see the hell from which many of our children come. When these children show up in our classrooms, they are on the edge. The slightest word can set them off. The Jamaica Survey of Living Conditions 2019 has the statistics on corporal punishment and psychologically aggressive methods of punishment that are being meted out to our children in the age group of 0 to 9 years old. It continues to be frightening. The efforts we're making this year in collaborating with the Ministry of National Security to reach 97,000 parents, to do risk assessments and get our most at-risk parents the appropriate parenting program and support, are in recognition that if we don't change how our mothers, our fathers, and our caregivers handle our young children, we will be constantly running after the problem instead of being ahead of it. Madam Speaker, we recognize that our teachers need psychosocial support as well. The Jamaica Teaching Council provided virtual support group sessions for teachers entitled Return to Happiness. Teachers were engaged in 6 weeks of activities, including mindfulness, journaling, skill development in coping, and emotional awareness. Teachers registered voluntarily to join a group, and sessions were available after 4 p.m. on weekdays and during weekends. In recognizing the learning problems in our primary schools and that we need to do something different in order to better prepare our students for high school, the ministry is advanced in the implementation of the primary specialist teacher model in our primary school. The model is designed to help primary schools and primary school teachers transition from the generalist approach to specialist teachers deployed at the primary level of the education system. Teachers are therefore required to specialize in one of 8 defined specializations aligned to the national standards curriculum: mathematics and science, language arts and social studies, language arts and Spanish, music, visual arts and drama, religious education and civics, and STEM courses. To date, Madam Speaker, 378 schools, approximately 4,500 teachers, are advanced in the implementation of the model. A further 191 schools are scheduled to implement the model beginning September 2022, with the final 173 set to begin in September of 2023. The ministry's support to schools has included training for principals to lead the process, supported by the National College of Educational Leadership, the provision of access to software and the supporting training to develop timetables, the development and implementation of the redeployment platform, which is designed to identify the best specialization for each teacher. Teacher training institutions have transitioned their Bachelor of Education primary programs to begin the preparation of preschool teachers according to the established specification. The first group of specialist teachers is expected to graduate in 2024. The ministry will continue to work with the UWI Mona Campus School of Education to develop a postgraduate certificate program for the in-service training of teachers. The cost for implementation of the primary specialist teacher model for this financial year is $378 million. This accounts for the cost of additional teachers for multi-grade schools, resources to support teaching and learning, the development of new courses for the Bachelor's in Education primary program, and the development of the in-service teacher training program. It is expected that over a 5-year period, $2 billion will be spent to upgrade the competencies of teachers in alignment with the model. Madam Speaker, we have to tackle education on all fronts. Our students' nutritional
Speaker's time, the minister's time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the member's time be extended to allow her to complete the presentation within the approved timeline that we have agreed on. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Those against? Minister.
Madam Speaker, we have to tackle education on all fronts. Our students' nutritional status impacts access to learning, readiness for learning, and success at learning. And so for this year's budget, approximately $6.5 billion was approved under the school feeding program. For the financial year, 130,306 beneficiaries are to benefit under this program. The draft National School Nutrition Policy was signed off by the Ministry of Education and Youth and the Ministry of Health and Wellness and has been submitted for the next step of the approval process. The policy will facilitate the development of guidelines for increased access to safe and nutritionally adequate food in schools, facilitate a greater focus on physical activity in school environments, facilitate the development of healthy eating and lifestyle choices by children, and contribute to improvement in the nutritional education and knowledge of children and their families. Madam Speaker, the issue of student dress and grooming has always been a major concern for schools, and that at times have resulted in students being sent home for breach of the Student Code of Conduct. Principals are being reminded, and we have been doing this from time to time, that the school's department policy should be guided by the ministry's grooming policy guidelines. And where possible, special consideration should be afforded to students and their families as they attempt to rebound from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and as they try to comply with the department policy of the institution. A draft dress and grooming policy for public educational institutions has been circulated to key stakeholder groups for their feedback. It is expected that this policy will be available to schools at the start of the next school year. Madam Speaker, in speaking about education, we have to be aware that education is delivered by a central entity and its regions. And so we also have to look at the operational efficiency at the Ministry of Education. Customer service will significantly improve if we can implement operational efficiencies across the central ministry and its regions. A major part of this work has started with the implementation of My HR Plus, an integrated HR and payroll system that serves the public sector. Key features include human resource management, payroll management, attendance, employee self-service, and so on. Earnest work has begun at the ministry, and the functionalities are being implemented and expanded. Efforts are apace for the mass digitization of personnel records of teachers and staff in public schools, as well as staff within the Ministry of Education. As of March 2022, there are about 24,847 active teachers in the system, of which a total of 11,268 files have been digitized. Additionally, the system is currently being piloted to allow for leave calculation, beginning with central ministry staff. As the functionalities are expanded, improved customer service will be experienced. Madam Speaker, the recent Jamaica Education Transformation Commission's report that the Prime Minister commissioned has 55 prioritized recommendations across 7 broad areas. The first recommendation is for an implementation oversight committee to be formed. This has been done. The Prime Minister has announced the appointment of Dr. Adrian Stokes as the chairman. He's a former group strategist for the Bank of Nova Scotia, Jamaica, holds a PhD in finance from the University of Manchester, and a master's in economics from the University of the West Indies. He sits on various boards. He's a former Commonwealth Scholar, a graduate of the University of Manchester, and he has good distinctions, educational distinctions. Early childhood is a major focus of the Jamaica Education Transformation Commission report. This year, the government is providing approximately $708 million to continue to provide trained practitioners in our brain builder centers and in the private sector owned and run daycare centers. As of March, there were some 2,369 early childhood institutions operating in Jamaica. In the ECC census for academic year 2019-2020, the total enrollment in early childhood was 111,832 children. There are some 11,591 early childhood practitioners and caregivers working in the sector, making it, on average, 10 children per practitioner. Governor General Sir Patrick Allen proclaimed 2022 the year of early childhood development, a significant milestone for the sector. Through our series, Learning Leaders, Empowering Communities, the ECC conducted training sessions of school boards, principals, on different areas, including corporate governance. Approximately 8,000 parents actively participated in over 1,000 virtual sessions. Our community relations officers provide moral and psychosocial support for parents, and there were many, many WhatsApp groups over which these were done. Madam Speaker, the Standard 2 training program was developed by the ECC and through Heart Trust NSTA will be offered to early childhood practitioners in the 2022-2023 school year. The program was designed to support the early childhood institutions to have comprehensive programs designed to meet the language, physical, cognitive, creative, socio-emotional, spiritual, cultural, and school readiness needs of children. The early childhood practitioners will be exposed to techniques which allow for a better understanding of the Standard 2, ultimately improving the quality of the programs offered by the early childhood institutions. In September to October of last year, due to the continued effects of school closures, the ECC increased the focus of the practitioners in understanding the importance of play in early childhood development. The Reimagining Play is a series of training sessions focused on knowledge, skills, and competencies. They also have a 0 to 3 comprehensive course for our practitioners. And this was run last year and will continue in the years ahead. There are many programs offered at the early childhood stage to our practitioners to ensure that they continue to increase their knowledge of the young children and how best to interact with them and help them to develop as they come into the schools from day to day. In order to help our parents participate in their children's education, especially in the early childhood sector, we must give the parents tools. And so we will be launching a series called What Should My Child Know and Do? This will allow parents to track how their children are doing, but also give them the knowledge about what their children should know and do, and by what age they should know and do these things. This will allow more timely intervention and a closer working relationship with the practitioners and the parents. What Should My Child Know and Do? Education campaign will focus on 4 areas: reading development, language development, physical development, and emotional development, and more will be said about this in the days ahead. In all of this, Madam Speaker, we have not forgotten our special needs students. At the ministry, we have an entire unit focused on special education that is doing the same things for those schools as we do for the others. When the pandemic hit, we prioritized our special needs students and continued to develop a curriculum for them. We expanded the number of shadows, did modification of material, created material for adaptation, and with PEP approaching, we're providing our special education students with support in the administration of PEP. They would have taken the first part of it. Our recovery plan, Madam Speaker, is for all our students. Students, particularly the disadvantaged, will need tailored and sustained support to help them readjust and catch up on lost learning. Madam Speaker, catering for the special needs of children and youth within the sector is at the heart of the ministry. During the year, 18 institutions were funded to the tune of $52 million to provide educational, rehabilitation, and therapeutic services for children with diverse disabling conditions. We also continue to provide caregivers to the system. We've initiated the development and implementation of a national school-to-work transition program for students with disabilities, as well as the national standards for special education and programs. Madam Speaker, turning now to infrastructure development. We have to move on a number of different fronts swiftly for our infrastructure development. Number one, we have to create more brain builder centers for our 0 to 3 years old and pick up the pace of creating more infant schools and infant departments. We have to take our schools off shift. Madam Speaker, in 2021, we're still talking about shift schools. 37 schools, of which 16 are primary and 21 are high school, still remain on shift. This impacts a total of almost 50,000 students. We have to build the 6 STEM or STEAM schools and 1 performing arts center. We have to expand other schools that are in need because they have more students than the number of classrooms they were originally built to accommodate. We have to maximize our annual maintenance budget, which is $400 million this fiscal year, to fix the leaking roofs, the broken windows and doors, the faulty electrical, to repair the sanitary facilities, provide termite treatment, and so on. Madam Speaker, where we are in terms of the STEM project and the Performing Arts project is that we will shortly announce our competition, or design competition. That will be, the information about that should be going out within the next several weeks, and we hope to see the creativity of our Jamaicans in kind of envisioning what STEM schools should look like in Jamaica. This financial year, Madam Speaker, the ministry will continue to repair and maintain schools. We will complete work on 4 major infrastructure projects being carried over from last financial year. Black River High School, construction of 2 classroom blocks with a total of 12 classrooms and a wastewater project. Excellent. Kingston College, completion of computer labs, library resource center, and wastewater project. Papine High School, a school with 18 classrooms for 1,300 students. Wow. Urgently needs to get off shift. Needs at least another 18 classrooms and a wastewater project. In addition, we will begin construction on 9 major infrastructure projects: Cedric Titus High, Bridgeport High, Homewood Technical, Exchange All Age, Westwood High, Albertown High, Newell High, Mount St. Joseph High, and Dias Infant School, and fencing and electrical upgrades of several schools across the island. Procurement for construction services will also be undertaken within the financial year for 9 major infrastructure projects: Papine High, Port Antonio High, Denham Town High, Nain High, New Forest High, Belair High, Aberdeen High, Stony Hill Technical High, and Brown Brook Primary. The infrastructure development projects are designed to enhance the teaching and learning environment for our students and teachers across all levels of the education system. The projects are geared towards the elimination of the shift system, the reduction of overcrowding in schools, and the provision of quality school spaces. In addition to all of this, that too, that's there. In addition to what I have announced, Madam Speaker, we have a 5-year plan for 50 schools starting in the next financial year. 50 schools across all our parishes, Madam Speaker. In every constituency. Yes, in every, across, because they all need, but we have to prioritize those 50 in the next financial year. Madam Speaker, turning now to technology in schools, the utilization of technology in education is paramount as we look towards the 21st century. We have great plans that we started executing on already. Our goal is to have adequate connectivity in all our schools. And we have begun to do that. 30 of our schools are already on the high bandwidth infrastructure of the government. Pretty soon, another 381 schools will be connected to the government internet service through third-party contractor. Yes. 362 schools will get Wi-Fi local area network installed and upgraded. Madam Speaker, on May 7th of last year, our pilot Coding in Schools program was launched in collaboration with the Amber Innovations Group at Stonehill Hart NSTA Academy, targeting 2,000 students in grade 4 and 9. After an assessment by the ministry and talking to stakeholders, we are now at the point where we can expand it to more schools across the island. November of last year marked the beginning of the full rollout of coding in schools, including the training of our teachers. And this is, from all indications, it's going very well. In our children and youth portfolios, of course, our children remain our #1 priority. We know the agency launched and activated its 211 child helpline for reporting child abuse. Right? The helpline aim is to make reporting, especially from children, easier. To date, Madam Speaker, we are seeing, since the 211 helpline was launched, a total of 94,964 calls have come in. There is clearly acceptance of this helpline. However, we still have a lot more to do in terms of resourcing it, given the large number, the volume of calls that have come in. Right. Madam Speaker, we continue to work on our legislative agenda. We have done much work, and pretty soon you will see me come to Parliament with different pieces of legislation to deal with ensuring that abandoned children spend less time in state care, and so on. Madam Speaker, we are working as well on developing and implementing an early warning system so that we are able to spot when things are happening to our children rather than just wait for that call to come in. And the work there, yes, the work there is going apace, led by the Child Protection and Family Services Agency as well. Madam Speaker, I have to speak about the groundbreaking of our therapeutic center. That ground was broken last year for the therapeutic center on the grounds of the Maxfield Park Children's Home, which signaled the beginning of the construction phase of the project. Is going quite well. The center will seek to consolidate the provision of psychological and therapeutic intervention to provide consistent psychosocial services for children displaying mild to severe behavioral and emotional challenges. Despite the challenges faced by Maxfield Children's Home, our goal is to do the planning and execution of the work that will transform the Children's Home to be a model of child care center for excellence. And I again want to thank Minister Morgan for the work that he put in while he was at the Ministry of Education and Youth. Madam Speaker, under the youth portfolio, a number of programs and initiatives were started last year, and new ones are being undertaken for this financial year. A lot of sensitization was done. With respect to Youth Month, we would have seen 40 National Youth Month activities that were hosted to engage our youth. Some, just to name a few, youth in investment, youth with disabilities, Pond the Corner series, and so on. The Prime Minister's Special Award was introduced for 2021, and one young person was conferred with the award. In a bid to provide access service, among others, to the youth population, approximately 10,000 youths were facilitated in youth innovation centers and access points. For this financial year, the youth portfolio will continue the work in providing programs and activities geared towards the empowerment of our young people. Madam Speaker, just a word on the National Council on Education. During the period 2021 to 22, there has been a remarkable improvement in the training of school board members. Over 3,000 board members were trained in 8 two-day virtual sessions in the 7 educational regions. The boards are also supported with ongoing sensitization sessions based on request. With regards to the appointment process, significant progress has been made in appointing school boards on time, that is, before the end of the tenure of the outgoing board. This is necessary to prevent a hiatus in the governance process. Record levels of achievements were accomplished in Regions 4, which is Hanover, St. James, and Westmoreland, and Region 5, Manchester and St. Elizabeth in March, with over 70% of school boards being appointed before the end of the tenure of the outgoing board. As you know, Madam Speaker, school boards play a vital role in the governance of public educational institutions in our country. They have extensive responsibilities and are required to operate within a complex legal and regulatory framework. Madam Speaker, as I wind down here, looking at the quality of education and the alignment with future job markets, this we do know, the future job market landscape will continue to evolve, bringing us jobs in the next 2 decades than we can barely imagine now. Forefront in our minds in the education sector is the question, what set of skills we emphasize now so that our children will be prepared for that future job market. Report after report point to higher cognitive skills, which include advanced literacy and writing, critical thinking, quantitative analysis, and statistical skills, social and emotional skills as well, to allow our students to have advanced communication, empathy, adaptability, and the ability to learn continuously. Experts say one of the biggest things that students today need to succeed at work is the ability to work as a team. They need to understand how to communicate, compromise, and share credit so that they can be a valuable contributing member to projects. These are some of the things that we hope that our STEAM curriculum will deliver for us, but beyond that, we have to teach life skills and workplace habits that employers prioritize, including reliability, punctuality, written and presentation skills, customer service, and high-quality task completion. Madam Speaker, we have to teach our Jamaican students about Jamaicans who have excelled, so our students have an appreciation of a wider range of excellence and persons as role models in a wide variety of fields. And today, in celebrating outstanding Jamaicans on the global stage, and I will continue to do this so that our children, our students, can know what Jamaicans like themselves are doing. Jamaican Claire Nelson, futurist, sustainability engineer, social engineer, and storyteller, is the founder and president of the Institute of Caribbean Studies. Ms. Nelson has been included in the Forbes magazine list of the 59 most influential female futurists in 2020. She is Claire Nelson, PhD, attended St. Hugh's School for Girls in Jamaica. Among her advanced degrees are the industrial engineering degrees from the State University of New York at Buffalo, Purdue University, and a doctorate in engineering management from George Washington University. We also want to highlight for our students, pilot Dion Byrne. Articles on her says she pilots one of the world's most impressive aircraft, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, which seats up to 290 passengers and estimated to cost about US $250 million. In a profession dominated by men, this is an achievement in the aviation industry. Pilot Dion Byrne, a Jamaican, has flown for United for many years. She's a Westwood High Pass student. And then Mr. Walt Brathwaite, born in Jamaica. He received an engineering degree, joined Boeing. He's credited with being an early pioneer of a small feat of engineering that's arguably the most important invention of the 20th century. It is known as CAD, computer-aided design. Historians say we have Mr. Walt Brathwaite to thank for it. Mr. Brathwaite's team oversaw the engineering development of the Boeing 707, 727, and 737, and later, as head of engineering operations for the 747, the 767, and the 777, the first commercial aircraft to be designed entirely with computer-aided design. Of course, we celebrate Jamaicans at home as well, and again, as we move into celebrating Jamaica's 60th, you will hear more of this being highlighted from the Ministry of Education and Youth. We want to impress on our students that Jamaicans are excelling at home and abroad in a wide cross-section of industries so that they have that model in their head as well. Madam Speaker, the tertiary institutions have generally resumed normal operations, with most utilizing hybrid models for the delivery of some courses and engaging students face-to-face. Most are focused on full resumption of face-to-face for this year. Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission, JTEC, maintains two databases which provide timely information, especially to students preparing for entry to tertiary education. There's a program tuition fee database, and there's a scholarship database, which provides details on scholarships as well as other financing options available to Jamaican students to study in Jamaica. And we know that financing is a big hurdle for many in the tertiary sector. We've also provided an initiative to attract teachers. So, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Education and Youth provides tuition funding for tertiary students pursuing courses of study in education, especially in STEM-related fields, under the Tertiary Students Assistance Program. The first cohort of 247 fully qualified teachers did graduate in 2019, but we have another 350 that graduated in 2020, and there are more scheduled to graduate in 2022. In addition to the scholarships offered for teacher education, the ministry introduced a suite of engineering scholarships available for students pursuing programs at the University of the West Indies, University of Technology, Caribbean Maritime University. So we want our tertiary students to know of this. The ministry's scholarship program has an annual budget of $365 million. Applications are opened, and if you visit our website, you will see. So, Madam Speaker, as I close, I could not close without speaking about our sixth form Pathways program. In the first instance, it is learning loss mitigation strategy for those who already left grade 11 in June of last year. With significant reduced educational levels, having lost almost 2 years as a result of the pandemic, they have a chance now to recover those 2 years in the sixth form Pathways program 2 and 3. However, Madam Speaker, the sixth form Pathways programs 2 and 3 are more than a pandemic loss mitigation effort, much more. These two programs are for those students who get to grade 11 and want a chance at tertiary education or a good job. despite not being able to access the traditional sixth form program, primarily offered by our traditional high schools due to the very high cost and the requirement to have 5 CSEC subjects, including maths and English. In order to give those students a fighting chance, we've created these 2 new pathways, 2 and 3, with a focus on providing students with an opportunity to meet the minimum certification standard and support them in working towards it. We're pleased, Madam Speaker, that since the launch of this program, we've seen an uptake by our students. Across all the sixth form programs, the traditional pathways 2 and 3, a total of 19,000 students registered this academic year. This is an increase. This is an increase of 8,194 students so far, Madam Speaker. We are pleased that our children are responding to this. And we'd like to just acknowledge our students who are sitting in the gallery. Many of them up there are our sixth form pathways 2 and 3 programs.
We are closing now, Madam.
As I speak,
right.
I'm ending. Okay. Madam Speaker, there's no shortcut to improved learning outcomes. In a world economy where knowledge and skills have become the global currency, the key to better jobs and better lives, we can only develop it through sustained effort and investing in our students. So changing the future of education means embracing the recommendations of the Jamaica Education Transformation Report 2021 Commission Report. Changing the future of education means the ministry getting into homes to understand the issues with which our children are faced and bringing to bear the full resources of the government. Changing the future of education means making the Ministry of Education and Youth more forward-facing, proactive, and sympathetic to the needs of our teachers, those needs that can be fulfilled by the ministry, such as better service. Madam Speaker, there are no grand revelations, no magic wand. There is no shortcut to improve learning outcomes. And Madam Speaker, when I say that there are no shortcuts, there is no place where this was more evident and true than at the stadium this past week. Madam Speaker, the display of students' talent, hard work, discipline, determination, drive to success, loyalty to school, and future promises at the Issa Grace Kennedy Boys and Girls Championship elicit immense joy, especially since we got the opportunity to experience it not only in the televised world but also in person. I am deeply proud of all of our students, the coaches, the principals who made accommodations in their budgets, the past students and parents who went above and beyond in the joint effort to hone the skills and to showcase the best in our students. Not even the pandemic could deny the preparations for the championships and the added bonus of the new records that were created by some of our athletes. This is what happens when we work in partnerships. Our students become their best selves. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, we really want to thank the Minister for an outstanding presentation with details and good news for the future of education in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, we continue to make the point and urge that we stay within the time, the extent to which we offer. No, we are ensuring, Madam Speaker, that we do stay as close within the time and to respect the protocols of this wonderful House. Madam Speaker, I now ask you to invite the member from East Kingston and Port Royal to make his presentation.
Go ahead, member.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I will remind this House every time I speak that I'm the best behaved member of this chamber. And the Speaker has attested to that time and time again. So, Madam Speaker, in the entire chamber. So, Madam Speaker, I would like to start by acknowledging the leader of our great party and the leader of the opposition for his continued support. I would, of course, extend that to my colleagues on this side, and as I want to work across the aisle to acknowledge also my colleagues on that side of the chamber. Madam Speaker, I have to salute you and also extend that now to our new clerk and indeed the entire staff of this great parliament as we anticipate moving sometime soon to a bigger and better place. But they have worked under these circumstances tremendously well. So commendations to them. My political family from the great constituency of East Kingston, Port Royal, headed by my two female councillors, and I emphasize that, because in East Kingston, women are boss. Lorraine Dobson and Jacqueline Lewis. And of course, I want to thank my professional office staff, Associate Attorney Teresa and my Special Assistant Aisha, along with other members of staff who couldn't be here today, security and driver, and of course the task force that assists me in the work that I do here. Madam Speaker, please allow me a special welcome to one who I regard as one of my political mothers in this life, my friend, Dr. the Honorable Una Clark, the first foreign elected U.S. Congresswoman of the New York City Council. No, man, she deserves a bigger round of applause. She's over there. Madam Speaker, Una is quite unique because as a Jamaican from St. Elizabeth migrating to the U.S., she, as with so many other Jamaicans, she has distinguished herself as a great Jamaican. Somebody who pioneered in the field of politics. But not only that, she bears a daughter who is a congresswoman today in that great state of New York. And I want to salute her, thank her for the support over the years. And I know I see the Prime Minister winking to me. So I'll pause for a moment just to allow him to say a few words.
Madam Speaker, I wish to thank the member from East Kingston and Port Royal for allowing me to interrupt his presentation. But it is necessary to do so, Madam Speaker, because I cannot allow him to claim entirely the very good relationship and indeed the great and distinct honor it is for us to have former councilwoman, extraordinary Jamaican who has championed the cause of Jamaicans in the United States for decades, really. And of course, Madam Speaker, I was in the United States just recently, and I was hosted in the U.S. Congress by Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, daughter of former Councilwoman Una Clarke. Madam Speaker, it's very important that we acknowledge the work that our diaspora does on our behalf. When our voices are not heard, when we are in difficult circumstances, it is persons like Una Clarke who have championed on our behalf. And we want to express our gratitude in the Parliament today.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister.
Just before the member continues, I am endorsing all that has been said, including the fact that the member did say he is one of the best behaved members of the House, and he has proved that for allowing the Prime Minister to honor our behalf as a Parliament to pay tribute to the Congress.
And Madam Speaker, in that regard, may I speak from a seat other than my own?
And member, even as you do, and she sits there, may we invite congressmen to join us in the well of Parliament.
And while she comes, Madam Speaker, and I certainly will be claiming back my 5 minutes. I know her husband is also here, so we should also salute him as well. Behind every good woman is a good husband, so let us also recognize. And even while she comes, we should also note, because she is a great friend of the newly appointed ambassador, U.S. ambassador to Jamaica, a Jamaican, Nick Perry. We also need to salute him as a tremendous leader. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I am pleased to be making my 25th presentation in these debates. It really is 27. I served 2 years in the upper house before. We track each other, Prime Minister. I'm watching you. I'm especially delighted to be making this contribution today, as we are about to start the official celebrations of our 60th anniversary as an independent nation. This is an opportune time for reflection and introspection for us as leaders in this nation that we all hold so dear. As an independence baby, and in that regard, I have one over the Prime Minister, I must acknowledge that while we have made major achievements over these years, a lot more could have been and still needs to be accomplished on behalf of the people of this blessed and much-loved nation. I, however, remain a proud and patriotic Jamaican, and I truly believe that our best years are still ahead of us. You know, Madam Speaker, recently while I was in London, and I travel a lot these days, I attended the play, listen to this, Get Up, Stand Up, which depicts the life and music of the legend Robert Nesta Marley. I was supremely proud of that experience, even becoming emotional, especially as I witnessed the audience rocking and vibrating to the Jamaican music and obviously understanding our rhythmic language. The greatness of Bob and Jamaica was fully on show. We are indeed a cultural superpower, Madam Speaker. Anywhere in the world you go, Jamaica as a country is known, and it is due to our greatness, mainly in sports and music, but certainly in other areas. So we have to ask ourselves some questions. Why then can't we achieve greatness in other aspects of our lives? Why can't we overcome our spotty achievements, say, in education, with the limited areas of excellence, and cause that to be replicated across the entire system? Why do we continue to waste so many of our people by meaningless bloodletting, when so many of our visitors believe that Jamaicans are so friendly and peaceful? That's the irony in all of this. This level of violence is senseless, and we must solve it. Jamaica has one of the highest repeat visitor ratios in the Caribbean. The Minister of Tourism will tell you. Yet so many of our people now perceive their future as revolving around securing immigrant status in a foreign destination. I really believe that we have to use the occasion of this, our 60th anniversary, to take stock and to truly define and work towards a safer and more secure Jamaica. A quality society, if you will. Yes, Madam Speaker, we need to define and work towards the Jamaican dream. Prime Minister, I'm disappointed that so far we have not seen it fit to use this Diamond Jubilee as an opportunity to advance some major transformation projects, some big ideas that will lead to major development to benefit our people. You will recall, Madam Speaker, that on the turn of the century, the then government promulgated many millennium projects. These included the massive highway across the east-west and the north-south corridors, the massive airport development that transformed Montego Bay Airport into a Caribbean hub, the modernization of the port of Kingston, leveraging its ideal location, the redevelopment and modernization of the island's main cruise ship port, and the establishment of the Port Antonio Marina. Major hotel projects that brought new investors into our tourism product and which opened Destination Jamaica to new markets beyond the US, UK, and Canada. Revolutionary telecommunications development. An expansion that brought modern communication tools and technology within the reach and access of even the most remote Jamaican villages and townships. Somebody they call youthful exuberance. And several others, which I could go on and on. Number portability. Madam Speaker, yes, it is true that we are experiencing the twin crisis of the pandemic and now the Russian war with Ukraine. And it is felt that we have to batten down, the Minister of Finance tells us that we have to batten down and keep our nerves and be fiscally conservative. Yet, as famed Stanford economist Paulwell once declared, Mr. Minister, a crisis is a terrible thing to go to waste. And there are so many others who subscribe to that, including your own friend, Michael Lee Chin. Like Lee Chin, I believe deeply in that concept. Now is the time to be bold and pursue transformational projects that will enable us to catch up to the objectives of our Vision 2030 master plan. Do you remember that? Vision 2030. This was to see exponential, sustained, and inclusive growth in our economy and development in our society with greater wealth created to enable our per capita income to approach first world status. That was the overriding objective of Vision 2030. It was the last PNP administration, Mr. Minister, that took the bold decision to place our economy on a path of fiscal responsibility and the prudent debt management. We asked the Jamaican people to make sacrifices, and the economy made gains. The opposition has no desire to destroy those gains, but we owe it to our people to take advantage of those gains and create a better life for all Jamaicans and not only a few. It is still possible for many big ideas to emanate during this year by both sides, working together on behalf of the people of this country. Let me therefore lend my own brand support and endorsement of the theme under which we mark this Diamond Jubilee, reigniting a nation for greatness.
Madam Speaker, we do recognize that this... It's false alarm? Oh.
That has to be done.
I submit that if the citizens are to believe in this theme, which is reigniting a nation for greatness, and to support it wholeheartedly, ideas and plans need to be developed that place the people at the center, so that each Jamaican will feel that they are considered as participants in the success and no longer, as many feel, as mere spectators. The development and implementation of such bold ideas and plans need not be characterized, Madam Speaker, with the usual unending disputes and conflicts. We can preempt this historic impediment by a deliberate strategy that must be led by the government to have meaningful and effective consultation to involve from the outset the views and cooperation of the opposition, and then to rid ourselves of the usual suspicion of graft by ensuring that all aspects of each project, that they are constantly monitored and scrutinized by the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee. I believe that if we are able to work across the aisle, ensure that there is proper monitoring so that the suspicious mind doesn't get involved, we could achieve a lot more for this country. So with that in mind, I want to turn to the two portfolio subjects for which I have responsibility. Madam Speaker, we are facing yet again another energy crisis. This is probably worse than those of the 70s and the period between 2008 and 2010. I'm sure that everywhere you turn in your constituency, Madam Speaker, you are hearing, as we all are, the howls of cries from everyone of higher electricity bills, light bill, and even more dramatic and weekly record-breaking price increases when you go to the pump to fill up. The JPSCO is complaining that it has become a tax collection agency of the government. The same claim can be made of Petrojam and the gas retail dealers. In the face of this great crisis, the government continues to engorge itself on the billions and billions of taxes collected. I repeat the calls made by the Leader of the Opposition and our spokesman on finance, as well as calls that have come in from many leaders of industry to cap the tax component on the fuel by using the government's own benchmark price established in this year's budget of $67. I also see the JPSCO CEO proposing a tax cut on electricity bills. Let me reiterate, taxes alone account for 16% of our light bill. I support this call as well. Madam Speaker, the government has announced a 20% discount for JPS customers for 4 months. The Honourable Minister of Finance must be aware that prices have already increased by more than 40% since the start of the year. Therefore, a 4-month respite, though appreciated, is woefully inadequate, Minister. So I want you, the Minister, to consider to extend the concession for the entire year as you consider the other proposals. 1 full year. And also, there is a current waiver, the Minister is aware, that is granted to producers of electricity on automotive diesel fuel, $4.86. That waiver expires at the end of this month to enable the Jamaican consumers to bear less burden. I'm also suggesting that this waiver be extended beyond this 4-month period to the end of the year. Madam Speaker, an observation that the JPSCO CEO also made, and of which I had every intention of addressing here, is the issue of our energy security. It is very likely that there will be a mad scramble by countries to find new sources for fuels as further sanctions against Russia escalate. I think that the only realistic, nearshore, and reliable source of crude oil and finished products is Venezuela. But Venezuela is currently under US sanctions, which quite understandably the GOJ is not going to violate. However, there is another approach, one which will require employing good diplomatic skills. Recall, Madam Speaker, in 2013, the US government had expressed great reservation about the Petro-Caribbean Agreement. There was discernible concern in Washington about the growing close relationship between Venezuela and certain CARICOM states like Jamaica. We were asked to attend a summit in Washington to discuss the issues. The summit was chaired by then Vice President Joe Biden. Jamaica was ably represented by our Prime Minister, Most Honorable Portia Simpson Miller, and I attended in support. To the credit of the US, all member states were invited, not just a few, and they were all in attendance. Madam Speaker, we used the opportunity to speak certain truths to our American friends as part of diplomacy. We not only defended our position to continue with the Petro-Caribbean arrangement, because it was good, but we also challenged the US administration to assist us with our own energy security issues. And out of that summit, we were called to question what we were doing with Venezuela. Out of that summit, a letter of intent for energy cooperation was signed between the US Energy Secretary and myself. Jamaica, out of that summit, became the first non-NAFTA country to get access to US LNG supplies. And that is how New Fortress Energy came to Jamaica. And they've invested over $1 billion in Jamaica. Out of that summit, the US gave support by way of OPIC for the financing of 2 major renewable energy projects, valuing over $200 million US in the 36-megawatt wind farm, BMR in Malvern, in St. Elizabeth, and the 20-megawatt, which became at that time the single largest solar farm in the Caribbean in Content, Clarendon, out of that summit. I dare say that out of that summit, we planted the seeds for the eventual visit to Jamaica of President Obama. This is how diplomacy works. Principled discussions, speaking truths to our friends, and pursuing our best interests, which involve the participation of our Caribbean community. So back to the question of Venezuela. Now, in relation to that, I think we have to overcome some difficulties. Because, to be quite honest, I have been very disappointed with what is perceived to be ungratefulness shown to Venezuela in recent times. You know, the then Minister of Finance in 2008 will tell you that if it weren't for Petro-Caribbean during that great and massive depression, our country would have been wiped out. Would have been wiped out. And not only that, but when we came back into office, we negotiated a tough deal which saw the writing off of $1.5 billion US of our debt by Venezuela. There is a lot of making up to do. And I'm so happy that I saw some signals recently from the US. I think Jamaica has to follow suit in this way. Madam Speaker, we are now reviewing the Electricity Act, which was passed by me in 2015. And I must commend the Minister. They passed by the House in 2015. And that is not true. That is not true. It was replacing a beast. It was replacing, yes. No. But you see, I don't correct the record enough. And I allow people to tarnish my achievements. We were replacing a law that was in place for 100 years. It was breakthrough legislation. Yes, it was. And the minister will tell you that as a former minister, I also acknowledge that there were certain stages to follow. And I'm pleased that we are doing the amendments now, because from 2015 we know that we couldn't live with it for eternity. So one of the issues that we have seen so far is that of the right of first refusal. And almost every member, both sides of the committee, has a view that we should not continue with this right of first refusal. But lo and behold, Madam Speaker, it was confirmed to me that the company, JPSCO, is now actively pursuing a soliciting process for bids to replace 171 megawatts of existing capacity. I'm also aware that the proposal is to use natural gas, LNG, as the main fuel. We don't have a problem with that. But ADO, automotive diesel oil, as the alternative fuel. I have some concerns. The demand for electricity has been falling, especially since COVID-19. It is likely to continue to fall as many customers move their business to other sources. So, firstly, will there be enough demand to justify the addition of this new capacity to the grid, even though it's replacing some existing ones? Will the already overburdened JPS customers have to pay the fixed capacity charges, even if the plant is not called upon to produce any electricity? Once they have a power purchase agreement, all of those capital charges must be borne and passed through to the consumers. Will the JPS customers have to meet the commitment for fuel charges as another take or pay arrangement is in place? Why would the alternative fuel be ADO when we know that HFO, heavy fuel oil, is the cheaper source? Why would the company be rushing this process when the Joint Select Committee is addressing the very issue at this time? There has been great support, Madam Speaker, by the Joint Select Committee to enable operators in the special economic zones to generate and distribute lower-priced electricity within those zones, and that they be allowed their own licenses to do this. This will... Madam Speaker, we are not seeing enough take-up in the SEZs. These are export-oriented activities, and you are not going to get the explosion in new business if we don't have more incentives. And the primary incentive is cheaper electricity. I also want to suggest to the Minister that in relation to small and micro business, medium-sized business, you have quite rightly, and we acknowledge that, offered some resources to the sector, more resources. But can I suggest that you earmark a certain portion of those resources to go directly to assisting small and medium-sized enterprises with their energy needs, to enable them to establish their solar system, their wind system, and very importantly, money to pursue energy conservation and efficiency schemes. The way it is now structured, the lenders of such money are not aggressive enough. They don't pursue these people, and the bureaucracy is hell. It is difficult to go through the burden of paper to get government money to assist businesses. I urge that we pay special attention to these. And I want to finally mention that the Minister of Energy is aware the JPSCO license is coming to an end, as all things. I think he needs to use this opportunity of this period to start to negotiate. And in fact, not only negotiate, but to effect some changes now, using some leverage, because we are going to be moving to a more liberalized regime. And I think you can use some leverage from now to get some concessions at this time. And in that regard, Madam Speaker, the Minister has announced again that the government is going to sell its 20% shares in the JPSCO. I think the time is bad. You are not going to maximize your earnings during a crisis. And in fact, during such a crisis, when the company is want to exert greater pressure to recover on the consumers, we need the government to be present at the board. We need the government to be present at the board. But not only that, we saw a recent example of the government's desire to democratize shareholdings in this company, to allow the small man to get a piece of Wigton Wind Farm. Wigton Wind Farm, again, I'm not going to claim too much for it. Yes, youthful exuberant. But it was, yes, it did start before my time. But, yeah, all right, I won't. But, Mr. Minister, it hasn't really worked. Because, yes, you did earmark a certain amount of the shares to go to some informal shareholders. But within weeks of that happening, within weeks, large shareholders gobbled up all of those shares. Well, whatever you call it, the fact is that when you look at the Wigton shares today, they are owned by large shareholders. So let me suggest to you another way. If you really want to democratize this thing, allow employee share ownership as one of the ways to go this way. ESOP. That's a fine example. And I suggest that along with others. And we would work with you to enable that transfer. But now is not the time. Now is not the time to sell Wigton shares. Madam Speaker, I have to talk about electricity theft. Because in my presentation last year, I challenged the administration to accept greater responsibility for the issue of electricity theft affecting the company and the Jamaican consumers. We know that consumers who pay their bills have to contribute 17% of what you pay to offset theft of electricity. 17% of the bills paid by JPSCO customers is due entirely to electricity theft. We also know from the CEO of JPS that 16% of the bill is government tax. Just add up the two, and you see the burden that the Jamaican people have to face. And then it's not only the Jamaican consumers, businesses, and government, because government is the largest user. So last year, I offered a possible solution to this problem by presenting a plan that the government could implement to effectively end the scourge of theft. This plan was for the GOJ to use funds collected from the hedge tax to establish solar power systems with batteries to be installed in low-income communities. This would qualify under the original objectives of the hedge tax. Yes. Madam Speaker, I followed my presentation in Parliament by tabling a private member's motion on April 27, 2021. To my dismay, up to now, we can't get a debate going on that issue. So you can understand, Madam Speaker, that many people feel that these so-called sectoral debates are meaningless. I was very disappointed with the Minister's response he roundly dismissed my idea as fanciful without addressing it. So I waited and I waited, and I have been waiting for a proper debate on the issue. It is now 1 year and there has not been one word out of the ministry. What is sad, Madam Speaker, is that my disappointment aside, the recalcitrance of the minister and the Parliament really has placed a direct financial burden on the Jamaican consumer. No.
Madam Speaker, the member's time having expired and having been so generous in his opening sentences and allowing for Prime Minister to speak, I beg to move that his time be extended to allow him to finish his presentation, which is shortly from now. Which is shortly from now.
Oh, you have to wait, Member Paulwell. Members, the question has been put. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Member Paulwell.
Madam Speaker, that sounds so sweet and lovely. So I have been waiting. Now, Madam Speaker, if it's a question as to who will benefit from the adoption of the plan, I will ensure the Minister will get all the credit. But it cannot be that there is no response, no alternative plan, and no indication that the government is even thinking about the problem. One thing is clear is that the burden continues to be borne by the consumer. So, Mr. Minister, chum on. Let's do the right thing, man. Like we do it together. Let's work together. I'm not going to go too much into Petrojam. Last year, it's the same speech I have for Petrojam. 3 years ago, a report was tabled in the Parliament by the Zaka Committee. That report is gathering dust. And especially now when we're seeing how important an oil refinery can be for energy security. And I'm aware that there are people, Prime Minister, the Minister I think knows it, who would love to invest in Petrojam to continue the operations of an oil refinery that contributes to manufacturing, that contributes to good quality jobs. And also, as part of the big idea, they would welcome to participate in the expansion and upgrade of that original idea. I know that some of them are waiting. Give them a break, allow it. Do not shut down Petrojam to become a port for imports. I also want to mention in relation to Petrojam ethanol. No, that has been shut a good while now. I still believe that there are opportunities for Petrojam ethanol to be re-established. I believe that you can get good feedstock in sugarcane and in sorghum, and Jamaica can become competitive. But don't allow it to continue to dry rot. No, I'm not coming to that. Because you know, I have the slow year I'm going to go through because I don't want to repeat myself. Oil and gas exploration, the license that was given, the contract that was given in 2015, by now we should be seeing drilling for oil. The 3D seismic work that was done shows very good images. Minister of Finance, if we could be lucky and those images that we see, which represent blessed, which represents vast reserves, potential reserves of both oil and or gas. Yes, but we can't sit by and just allow it to go like that. You have to be aggressive. You have to be prepared to take risks. You have to challenge the contractors to go and drill now at this stage. And I urge for that to happen. So, Madam Speaker, I'm going to move on to mining. In the last year that I served as mining minister, I was in the middle of planning and implementing a national consultation on the state of the mining sector with focus on all aspects, not just bauxite and alumina. We wanted to develop a refocused national vision and a new and comprehensive strategic plan. That consultation was never done, despite repeated calls since then. It is absolutely necessary for us to engage in an open and frank discussion, especially as the sector will be with us for a long time. I hear people talking about that bauxite is only going to be here for another 20, 30 years. That's a long time too, but I suspect it might be much more than that. And many people don't remember that when we look at towns like Mandeville, Nain and those places, it's bauxite that developed those places. St. Anne, right? So don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let us have a serious dialogue now about this mining sector. Let us look at industry best practices, the issue of sustainability. Let us look at the negative perception about mining and how mining relates to communities that are in proximity. Let us look at the energy sources. Let us look at some of the global developments. Let us change the issues in relation to change in quality and size of reserves. Let us also look at how we maximize benefits to the communities and how we treat with taxation, because that is an important legacy. And none other than Michael Manley, who you emulate, was the one responsible for deriving the greatest share of revenues to this sector. And the Prime Minister knows why I mentioned Michael Manley, because inspiration. Madam Speaker, the mining sector continues to show mixed opportunities. A major priority of the ministry when I was in charge was the development and promulgation of a comprehensive plan to fully develop and expand the country's mineral sector. The national policy is now in place, and it provides the framework for attracting investments in the industrial and metallic mineral sectors. This includes the prospecting for gold and copper, as well as the exploitation of Jamaica's significant limestone potential. Jamaica has more than 250 billion tons of mineable limestone of varying qualities. The plan was to focus on expanding the sector's value-added possibilities. We saw great opportunities in the manufacturing of lime, hydrated lime, cement, thinset, boulders for coastal protection, slabs for cladding. In fact, we have such high-quality limestone here that can go into manufacturing toothpaste, paint, the tablet that you take. We have such quality limestone. So let us look at all aspects of the mining sector. As you know, Madam Speaker, in relation to bauxite alumina, Jamaica has been shut due to the fire last year. Gisco at Alpart, though committed to rebuilding a new plant, has not been able to proceed because of the impact of COVID-19. The only producing plants are Vindalco in Newarton and Aranda in St. Anne. Madam Speaker, I want to turn to a big idea, rare earth elements. And I know it provokes a lot of mirth inside here, especially in 2014 when I mentioned it. I am so happy to see that the Gleaner newspaper has been highlighting the prospect of using the bauxite residue for the extraction of very valuable rare earth elements. This is a big idea. Please recall when this project was conceived in 2014, Jamaica's estimated 100 million tons of red mud bauxite residue was envisioned to contain viable levels of several rare earth elements. We established right in Jamaica a state-of-the-art pilot plant financed by $5 million, which is now totally owned by Jamaica. This facility can be used to conduct a wide range of related experiments. I hope it is not being allowed to dry rot. The experiment to extract rare earth elements was successful. We need to celebrate our successes and not to be cynical, Madam Speaker. But where do we go from here? In this regard, I would like to quote from the Gleaner's editorial entitled, Revisit Rare Earth Possibilities, dated December 27, 2021. And I quote, "If the world is to have a shot at becoming carbon neutral by 2050 and keep the rise in Earth's temperature to below the tipping point of 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century, it has to involve, scientists say, a massive shift to renewable energy, including people giving up their internal combustion energy vehicles for electric-powered ones. Jamaica could probably have a significant hand in this, as well as re-emerge as a strategic player in the global market for minerals, such as it enjoyed in the days when it was the world's largest producer of bauxite. But for any of this to be possible, government policymakers, scientists at institutions with research capacities, and the island's private sector have to urgently begin to think and act now how to cost-effectively extract critical rare earth elements from the effluent from alumina production. Here is where, I'm still quoting the Gleaner, not me, here is where Jamaica's potential in rare earth elements is significant. A group of 17 minerals, rare earth elements are critical to a wide range of technologies, including computers, mobile phones, and the batteries for EVs and wind and solar systems. Madam Speaker, straight from the Gleaner, written by, it's an editorial from the Gleaner. Yeah. So the editorial went on. The only thing that it didn't say, Prime Minister, was that everyone should take Mr. Paulwell seriously. That's the only thing it didn't say. The point that was, however, being made makes me now say it. The government needs to take the Gleaner editorial seriously. That's right. The administration needs to be more aggressive in pursuing the private sector, if it as government won't do it, to invest in completing the work that was started, the financial scope of the business, and then to establish a commercial plant in Jamaica. Let us not seize the opportunities. Madam Speaker, before I get into the conclusion, there are just a few quick points I want to make in, again, giving some ideas to this government in this area of mining. Firstly, I want to propose, Prime Minister, because the bauxite levy issue has been plagued with problems where from time to time people come, the producers come to get concessions. So let us establish a fixed bauxite levy regardless of the price of aluminum. Once this is done, don't grant any more concessions. Once you turn the soil, you pay the levy. You pay the levy. And for heaven's sake, let us not go back into any profit-sharing arrangements. You are not going to see much profits. Secondly, Madam Speaker, let us establish a special fund where you put the bauxite levy and the royalties together, and you focus that fund on spending back money, reinvesting in the communities that are plagued. Yes, but I don't want the Minister of Finance to have total control of it. I want the MPs to sit as a special committee to direct, to reinvest, because one of the reasons why there's such a bad rap on bauxite alumina is that people are not seeing the benefits flowing back into their communities. I also want to suggest, Madam Speaker, and thank you for that applaud, I want to suggest that in collaboration with GISCO Alpart, let us look at Port Kaiser. We talk a lot about logistics hub. Let us look at Port Kaiser as a place that can attract imports of goods and service and logistics. Another big idea, it has deep sea all around it. Those large Chinese vessels can come there. They can't go to the North Coast, they can't go to Kingston, but they can go to Port Kaiser. And the Member of Parliament, I'm sure, would be quite happy if that were to happen. Also, Madam Speaker, we talk about the railway service. There is an existing network of railways organized by the bauxite companies. Let the government work with the companies to establish a network of the railway involved in the transportation of goods across this country, because you do have it in place. We are wasting it. And finally, Madam Speaker, in the 70s, Mr. Manley worked with bauxite producing countries to establish an international forum where, just like OPEC, we were able to dominate and control how bauxite was distributed and to maximize our earnings for it, to influence the price. Let us go back to that big idea and see if Jamaica couldn't start that process of international cooperation using bauxite. Bauxite is the raw material that eventually gives you aluminum. Aluminum is a metal that is going to be here for a long time. It's a metal that is in high demand. Let us show the world that without bauxite, there will be no aluminum. So let's exert our influence and pressure there in that regard. So, Madam Speaker, I conclude this presentation the way I commenced. We must not allow this Diamond Jubilee year to end without all of us, as one nation, agreeing to some major transformation ideas for implementation. Our country deserves it. Indeed, we owe it to our country. There are still some unfinished big ideas that were started. Let's finish them. You know, one of them, Julian will tell you, we are still to complete universal service for broadband telecoms. Let's complete it by making Jamaica a veritable hotspot with free Wi-Fi, not only in some communities, but in every public space in Jamaica. Let's take the big idea, Prime Minister. We had said 30% renewables by 2030. You said 50%. But can we do that? Can we agree to do that? Can we shake hands on that? Can we work with you on that strategy to implement it for the good of Jamaica? Can we do that? Can we do that? So we want to take that big idea and make it bigger. Madam Speaker, have you asked yourself, what is it that motivates us to want to see Jamaica transformed into a first world country? What is it that motivates us to invest all of this sacrifice to work for our country? It is because we all see the inherent greatness of this little rock. We see the greatness of so many of our people, but also the unfulfilled greatness that we are yet to grasp. In this, our 60th year, let us summon up even greater courage and determination to make Jamaica, land we love, a better place at last. Madam Speaker, while I excel in literature at Excelsior, I have not been known in this House to be poetic. I'm going to try my hand at it today. So on this occasion, I am moved to borrow the words of some great literary minds as they capture the thoughts that I believe are in sync with these times, in sync and palliative to the great wave of anxiety that still builds in the hearts and minds of Jamaican families. That wave has been eased for sure, as though not over. We are presently in a period of lull with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. Yet the wave of anxiety is rising in other areas, as lost learning, lost earning, and lost savings come at the same time as rising prices, rising inflation, and rising uncertainties. At the start of this presentation, Madam Speaker, I spoke of the twin crisis. Indeed, triplet would be more appropriate when one considers the crisis of crime by which we are still plagued. These challenges are real and they are severe. Equally real, yet promising, are the opportunities that lie before us. Considering the juxtaposition of crisis and opportunity, I'm reminded of the famed Charles Dickens quote from The Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I am patently aware that the Jamaican story up to this point can be dubbed the tale of two societies, one with access to jobs, earnings, financial wealth, and success, and all the amenities that anyone could want. That society could be called the all-access granted society. Then existing parallel to that one is the all-access denied society. Citizens of one see the luxury vehicles slow to a crawl through their communities during rush hour traffic, on the way to work or back home. In that society, our citizens live riddled with pain, riddled with hunger, riddled with dreams lost, dashed, and too often see the bodies of their loved ones riddled with bullets. While citizens of the next society stare through tinted glass in air-conditioned vehicles, while taking the shortcut home, watching the hapless gaze of those squashed in tenement yards, and who live as working poor or closer to abject poverty than any within this honorable House is brave enough to admit. This is not a sustainable dichotomy, Madam Speaker, nor is it a deserving reality for this great nation, still to emerge from promise to potential. The dissonance must be reconciled. History describes such settings as a precursor to revolution, an outcome that none of us would want to witness in our beloved Jamaica. History also teaches of the solution, and here again I want to borrow something from another great poet, Frost, of anxiety, of fear, and of dying, which he describes as a yellow wood, and choosing the road less traveled, when he said, "Two roads diverge in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same." Which of us, if given a choice to take the path that leads to obvious serenity and luster, would not? Yet it is never to be about us in this honorable House, but always about those in the constituencies we serve. Unfortunately, their choices are far more limited. They cannot decide to take the better path unless we decide in this House to play a better part. To play a part that sees us taking the road less traveled. Let us choose a path that avoids the political point scoring that has taken us nowhere near the milestone we should have already surpassed. Let us take the road less traveled on behalf of and in service to our fellow citizens. In this year of our Diamond Jubilee, let us all reevaluate and revalue our roles. If it is unworthy of the diamond, that is Jamaica, then let us travel on a different path. Let us all demonstrate more love to our country, not only when the country wins, but also when we are faced with crises as we are now. That love for country will enable us to be even more energized to work for Jamaica to be a better place, indeed a greater place, Madam Speaker. If we travel together as one traveler and take the road less traveled, that being unified in our mission, unified in our vision, and unified in our intention. That will make all the difference. Our 60th anniversary theme asserts reignition of a nation's greatness. That mission has my full endorsement, and all my intentions are measured against that ideal. Garvey said it best. Up, up, you mighty race. Accomplish what you will. What therefore is our will. Certainly mine is to do all that I can so that Jamaica may, under God, increase in beauty, fellowship, and prosperity, and play a part in advancing the welfare of the whole human race. It is time to give realness and value and quality to that will. The beauty must be restored and preserved. The fellowship must be sincere. The prosperity must be shared fairly. Nothing less, Madam Speaker, for our homeland. If indeed Jamaica is to become a nobler Jamaica, a loftier place. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, my honourable members. Namaste. Namaste.
Madam Speaker, we thank the member. Madam Speaker, we thank the member from East Kingston and Port Royal. I think he has joined with the Minister of Education by providing 2 outstanding presentations today. Madam Speaker, the next week, which immediately follows the Easter holiday break, and Easter Monday having been observed, I think, on the 18th, 17th of April, it is not intended to have any meetings on the 19th and 20th. So I propose, beg to move, Madam Speaker, that we suspend this debate until April 26, when we will continue, and the Speaker then will be Mr. Carlson, Honorable Carlson Mueller. Madam Speaker, may it please you to recommit the matters relating to public business so as to allow the Minister of Finance to proceed with his measures.
Just before we move to that, in terms of the suspension, the motion for the suspension of the debate, those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Debate is suspended. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance will now take the resolutions and motions that are in his name. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing order to enable me to take the motion, notice of which was given earlier. We're doing the BOJ first. Madam Speaker, I now move, be it resolved that the monetary policy statement covering the second half of 2021, which is contained in a letter from the Governor of the Bank of Jamaica to the Minister of Finance, dated February 23, 2022, the 2021 Bank of Jamaica Quarterly Monetary Report, Volume 22, Number 2, dated November 21, and the 2022 Bank of Jamaica Quarterly Monetary Policy Report, Volume 22, Number 3, dated February 2022, which were laid on the table of the House on the 17th day of March 2022, be referred to the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives, consisting of all the members of the House, for consideration and report.
Members, the question is that the monetary policy statement covering the second half of 2021, which is contained in a letter from the Governor of the Bank of Jamaica to the Minister of Finance dated February 23, 2022, the 2021 Bank of Jamaica Quarterly Monetary Policy Report, Volume 22, Number 2, dated November 2021, and the 2022 Bank of Jamaica Quarterly Monetary Policy Report, Volume 22, Number 3, dated February 2022, which were laid on the table of the House on the 17th day of March 2022, be referred to the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives, consisting of all members of the House, for consideration and report. Those in favor? Those against?
Speaker,
the ayes.
Could you allow me, please, just on this point? I'm obviously supporting the resolution, but I would like the House to make appropriate arrangements in terms of time for us to discuss this matter when it comes to standing finance. Last time it was scheduled before a meeting of the House, We had to rush. Members didn't get an opportunity to ask the questions they wanted. It is probably the most important issue affecting the country in terms of inflation and the response of the Bank of Jamaica. So I'm just asking that the House allows appropriate time for members to discuss this issue.
That is noted, and I'm sure the House Leader will make the correct arrangements. Therefore, those in favor, those against, the ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, now just want to deal with the resolution under the Procurement Act. I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which was given earlier.
Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I stand here this afternoon to table and ask for the affirmation of the Public Procurement Amendment of the First Schedule Order 2022. And this order was made pursuant to the powers conferred on me as Minister under Section 4, Subsection 2 of the Public Procurement Act of 2015. Madam Speaker, over the past 12 years, the Government of Jamaica has procured major road and highway infrastructure development projects through a government-to-government modality, with financing of the project tied to the construction. In particular, the government of China, through the China Exim Bank, has been instrumental in assisting Jamaica with its infrastructure development financing needs. This occurred, of course, in a context in which Jamaica lacked access to markets for infrastructure financing due to the chronic macroeconomic stability that characterized the investment climate here. The government of Jamaica will always be grateful for the assistance provided by the China Exim Bank through these infrastructure financing arrangements. At a previous sitting of the House, Madam Speaker, I signaled the intent of the Minister of Finance and the Public Service, and by extension the government of Jamaica, to graduate from these tied financing arrangements. With the improvement in Jamaica's macroeconomy, we can access market-based solutions for our infrastructure development needs. For instance, Madam Speaker, with the Montego Bay Perimeter Road project, we are financing this from the resources of the government of Jamaica. And in that case, where, as we had an order in this House, where the construction has been implemented, in that case, by China Harbour. When I initially made that announcement, Madam Speaker, of moving away gradually and in just moving the financing to be government finance, even with the China Harbour constructing, I did say, and I think members will recall, that we're going to be going even further with the highway infrastructure projects to follow the Montego Bay Perimeter Road. And I gave a commitment that we would use open and transparent and competitive processes for the procurement of construction services for major highway infrastructure projects. Madam Speaker, the Government of Jamaica, acting through the National Road Operating and Construction Company, NROC, has identified the need for the expansion, improvement, and maintenance of the following road segments: the Miami Bay to Salem, comprising 12.3 kilometers of flat terrain; Sea Castles to Greenwood, comprising 6.8 kilometers of flat terrain; and Greenwood to Discovery Bay, comprising 40.7 kilometers of undulating terrain. Is that my phone? Oh. So, Madam Speaker, altogether, this is 60 kilometers of roadway, essentially from Montego Bay to Ocho Rios. These road segments form part of the Northern Coastal Highway, and their current levels of service, which is a mechanism for determining how well a transportation facility is operating from a traveler's perspective, the level of service is poor. These roads are expected to accommodate 13,000 vehicles per day, but the current traffic on those road segments is approximately 23,000 vehicles per day. And those who have to traverse on that quote-unquote highway on a Friday evening or at other parts of the week, there's a bottleneck, literally from when you get off from the North Coast Highway all the way across. It takes a long time for motorists to traverse the corridor at certain times of the week, and therefore supporting and improve access to places of attraction along the corridor, as well as supporting additional development with all the work that the Minister of Tourism is doing. There's a lot of additional development that's expected in the tourist sector, but in addition, a lot of residential development is expected that's going to make the problem even worse. Madam Speaker, the member spoke about big projects, thinking big and ambitious. We began working with the IFC, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank, on an open and transparent and competitive process for procuring the construction services required for this construction. The IFC is a member of the World Bank Group, and their mandate is to support the World Bank Group's twin goals of reducing extreme poverty and enhancing prosperity. And as such, the IFC mobilizes investors, helps to create new markets, advises businesses and governments on private investments and connected matters. The IFC has been working with the government of Jamaica and has provided up until now its services free of cost on a pro bono basis. We now, based on the work done to date on this 60-kilometer stretch and all the preliminary analysis that has been done and the data that's been generated, we now seek to develop this project further to begin to result in an open and competitive process for procuring the construction services. To do so, we need to engage the IFC to provide the advisory services that are necessary to develop this project and bring it to market. So what we'll be doing, the IFC will provide advice that will allow us to develop the project and bring to market an open, transparent, and competitive procurement for what will be the single largest infrastructure project. Certainly, I'm going to go and do all my numbers, but at the number that we have here, and I'll share it shortly, it will be the single largest infrastructure project in Jamaica, pursued by the government of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the Procurement Act, which was passed in 2015 and amended in 2018, and was brought into effect on April 1st, 2019, and with the coming into effect of the Act, the Public Procurement Regulations and the Public Procurement Review and Reconsideration Regulations, which were affirmed by this House, both houses of Parliament, were also brought into effect. As members are aware, the Act is aimed at strengthening the government of Jamaica's procurement system and to ensure we obtain value for money in public procurement, promote integrity, and engender public confidence in the public procurement process. Section 4, subsection 1, and subsection 2 of the Act provide that the Minister may, by order, subject to affirmative resolution, amend the first schedule of the Act. The amendment of the first schedule allows for the non-application of the methods of procurement and the procurement process as set out in Part 3 and 5 of the Act to any specified procurement. The specified procurement in this case, Madam Speaker, is the Government of Jamaica's procurement of financial advisory services in respect of road development projects in Jamaica from the IFC, which is a subsidiary of the World Bank, through the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. Madam Speaker, the IFC, in which Jamaica is a shareholder, has considerable experience advising member governments on the development of infrastructure procurement through the public-private partnership modality. For over 30 years, the IFC's PPP Transaction Advisory has been working directly with government to implement a variety of public-private partnerships in infrastructure and other public services. Since 2004, the IFC has closed over 140 PPP transactions in 55 countries, leading to more than $34 billion of private financing. The PPP advisory work is a full-service advisory that assists government in all steps of project structure and implementation to successful closure, including carrying out detailed technical, legal, financial, and environmental, social studies, developing the financial models, structuring the PPP by defining how risks must be shared, designing the bidding process, and implementing a competitive tender that results in a bankable project for investors and that meets clear public sector goals, and preparing project agreements and helping the government and investor negotiate and sign a contract. The IFC has advised on several innovative and first road PPP transactions, including very famous ones in Central America, in Colombia, the 4G project, and large projects as well in the Philippines, in Brazil, and of course IFC has helped us most recently in the divestment of the Norman Manley International Airport through a PPP as well. Madam Speaker, in addition, working with the IFC would also allow the government to access grant resources, donor funds, that would help us to pay the cost of the advisory. And we accessing those donor funds by engaging the IFC, we can unlock those donor funds. Now, under the previous Procurement Act, we would need to do this. It allowed for us to engage with our development partners. That's an omission in this act, and there are other deficiencies, and we plan to come to Parliament at a later stage with a definitive amendment, at least to allow the government to engage its multilateral development partners on advisory matters. They have a development perspective as well as the transactional private sector perspective. No, so what I'm doing today, I'm saying what I'm doing today I'm saying what I hope to do in the future. In the future, this is just the most efficient way of doing it today. And it was built to allow it. But because we have other, I'm going to have to come back with other things we're working with IFC on. It may, and we'll discuss it, it may make better sense to have a carve-out for the multilateral development partners, but we'll have an opportunity to discuss that. For today, it's the means that the Act provides, that I come and I explain why we want to engage them. Transparent, yeah, so it works, right. So, Madam Speaker, given the positive relationship between the government of Jamaica and the IFC, given the IFC's development focus, in addition to, so when they come in an advisor, they're going to pay keen attention to environmental factors and other factors that you wouldn't get if you had another kind of advisor. And in addition, engaging them will allow us to unlock potentially donor funds. And given their demonstrable expertise and experience in the conceptualization, financing, and implementation of major infrastructure development projects through PPPs, it's necessary and sensible for the government to continue the development of these projects with the IFC by way of a financial advisory services agreement for the structuring and tendering of the road projects. Upon consideration of the methods in the Act by which the government could directly contract with IFC, the single source procurement method pursuant to Section 25 is not applicable, as there are no sufficient background facts in support of any of the grounds appearing in Section 25, subsection 1, subsection A, subsection 2, subsection E. This procurement, as facilitated by order, would essentially operationalize three objects of public procurement, namely, 1, the maximization of economy and efficiency in public procurement, 2, the promotion of economic development through public procurement, and 3, obtaining value for money in public procurement. Madam Speaker, in the first phase, the IFC will conduct due diligence and transaction structuring, which would involve specific inquiry into legal and regulatory issues, environmental and social considerations, including land acquisition and resettlement, financial analysis and assessment, and stakeholder engagement through public relations and communication. In the second phase, IFC will lead the tendering of the PPP, and the activities in this phase will include investor promotion, bidder pre-qualification, solicitation of offers, contract negotiations, preparation of contract, and tender award and closing. So, Madam Speaker, this would represent, well, I'll say it in my closing remark. The order now is just 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph provides an introduction of the order, the first schedule, and the section of the Procurement Act, which grant me in my capacity as minister the enabling powers. Paragraph 2 addresses the insertion of a new paragraph, P, to allow for the exclusion of financial advisory services procured from the International Finance Corporation in respect of road development projects in Jamaica from procurement procedures established under the Act. Madam Speaker, with the passage of this order, Jamaica will be moving to another level in terms of our infrastructure procurement. And it's something for us to celebrate as a country, that we are going to be opening up a market-based process for the procurement of large-scale highway infrastructure, where with the IFC's advice and help, we'll be able to go to market, we'll be able to specify what it is that we want to procure, and invite firms from around, I'll come to it in a second, and we'll invite firms from around the world to make their proposal to the government of Jamaica. And under the structure of that PPP arrangement, it will have the benchmarks for which we, or the team involved at that stage, to select the best bid that comes forward. And it's a great day in Jamaica when we actually get that done. As I mentioned earlier, Madam Speaker, this stands to be the largest. We're just at the advisory stage, and there's a lot of work to be done. But I know there'll be an interest in what is the size, the potential size of this procurement. Madam Speaker, I mentioned earlier that it would stand to be the single largest government infrastructure project in Jamaica, and at this stage, it looks as if it could be in the region of over $600 million US, or nearly $100 billion, and it will have a second phase that could take it to about $120 billion, Madam Speaker, which would be the largest infrastructure project embarked on by the government of Jamaica at any point in time. And we need the IFC's advisory services to get us to the level that we can actually launch such a tender process and get serious interest from around the world. And it's a great day, it will be a great day, that Jamaica can stand up and put something like this forward and have the credibility that will see large firms with large balance sheets who are able to take on this kind of activity come forward and offer their services in an open, competitive, and transparent way. Madam Speaker, I now invite members of this Honourable House to support the affirmation of this order. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, the Minister had reached out to me. We are not opposed in principle to what he has enunciated. I just have a couple of questions, Minister. With the PPP for this project, it means, would the road become a toll road once you get off the highway to get to Montego Bay? And so, yes. Oh, no, okay. Oh, you'll answer me, okay. And I was going to ask if that was so, what the alternative would be in this route would be. And secondly, the model that you're prescribing, is this going to be the model for all large-scale public infrastructure projects going forward that the government will be engaged in?
Thank you, Member. Two very good questions. Oh, I'll take all the questions. No, those are excellent questions. What we'll be doing is adding 2 lanes to the North Coast Highway essentially from Montego Bay to Ocho. So it will become a 4-lane road. Because it is a brownfield project, meaning something is already there and there's no alternative, it's not possible to toll the road. That would be against fair principles. So the idea is that will be a road that's open access, which means that the particular modality would be some kind of government pays PPP. Okay. Now, we have a lot of analysis and work to do, and the financial contribution of the government to the capital cost. Right? You can have PPPs where the government contributes nothing to the capital cost, or you can have where the government contributes all of the capital cost. And what happens is people bid to say how much it would cost, they construct it, and then we enter into an agreement that they maintain it over a period of time at a price that they tell us in advance. So it becomes government pays on that component. Or So there's a spectrum, but that spectrum, where we land on that spectrum, that's one of the things that we need advice on, and a lot of analytical work. But the short answer to your question is that, no, we're not envisioning a toll road. The exception would be where there is a greenfield component. For example, bypassing certain towns on the North Coast would be greenfield. Those would be entirely new, and you have the option to bypass or you have the option to go through. It is possible that those could be tolled, and putting in bypasses would increase the scope of the project. That's what I mentioned earlier. It could be 600 million, which is about 90-odd billion, or it could be 120 billion, which is about 800 million, if we are to add those, bypasses. But the principal 4-lane road on the North Coast, 60 kilometers, will not be tolled. I think the second question was... Oh, right. Yeah, I don't want to, it's difficult for me to give a carte blanche kind of, I gave you the commitment when I spoke here last on highway infrastructure, that as far as highway infrastructure projects are concerned, this is the kind of modality that we want to use. I don't want to speak more broadly to all infrastructure projects, but certainly for the highway infrastructure projects, this has been a goal and an ambition for the progress that Jamaica has made with our macroeconomy, for that to be reflected in the way in which we can procure these kinds of services, which offer new opportunity to Jamaica, open Jamaica to new investment sources, and further provides the prospect of further growth and development of the country.
Just two follow-ups. What is the value of the advisory services that IFC would provide, and how much of that you think you will get from donor funding versus the government paying?
Okay, so we are going to have to enter into that. I don't have the precise number, but it's not, these are not, it will, I don't want to give a number guessing or without knowing it, okay? But it's not, these are not, the reason why we would seek donor funding is that advisory services would be denominated in US dollars, and it can be a few million US dollars, okay? So what we have already done, we have already sought, made applications for donor funding out of some of the pockets or the funds that are managed, the donor-supported funds that are managed by the IFC. We will learn pretty quickly or shortly whether we are successful in that regard, but that would defray the cost. And in some instances, when we did the Norman Manley International Airport, we had, and I can, of course, talk about the donor in that case, that was Canada. They provided the donor support for that entire transaction, and we ended up not having to foot anything for the advisory services that we got from the IFC. I can't promise that the result will be the same here. I would hope so. But we're making best efforts to get as much support as we can for these advisory services. There's a lot of support for countries like Jamaica who are making a great attempt at opening up procurement in these kind of areas and being, using market-based competitive processes. So donors are generally supportive of that kind of initiative, that kind of effort. And so I hope and expect that we will receive at least some support to defray the cost of the advisory services.
Minister, perhaps you could just give us an idea of the role of NROC, if any, in this project. NROC has a couple of decades of experience in substantial highway development in difficult engineering conditions, dealing with large blue chip multinational developers. So one would have thought that that expertise would be of value in a project such as what you envisage. And I'm just wondering why we need the IFC, and if so, what if we do, to what extent is NROC going to be central to the process? Will they help to monitor the IFC, make sure the IFC is giving us good advice? in the best interest of Jamaica, or do they have no role whatsoever to play?
The NROC is absolutely essential to the process. Essential. IFC's counterpart for the project to date has been with officers who are attached to or have been attached to and are in the NROC space. As I said, we'd have probably been working on this from late 2020, and I've been integrally involved because of we're doing a procurement as a financing element, but doing so in tandem with officers from NROC, and on the technical aspects, IFC has been liaising with NROC to get to where we are today. And NROC will be the counterpart of the IFC as far as the engineering elements and so forth are concerned. The reason why we need the IFC opposition leader is that Jamaica does not have, or NROC certainly doesn't have the track record in putting together the kind of documentation, getting the kind of diligence all done, and putting a project together that is seamless and that is end-to-end ready for bidding, putting in transaction documents together, doing all the financial modeling, all the due diligence, and so forth. They're providing the same service to Jamaica that they provided to us for the Norman Manley International Airport bid, which was successful. We had 13 pre-qualified. No, the first time it didn't, but we didn't take their advice. But we can talk, that's a different thing we can talk about. So yeah, the Jamaica, has the enviable reputation of building an environment that's seen as very attractive for PPPs. But when the transactions are large and complicated, as this one is, this is the largest infrastructure project that we'd have entertained, this largest single infrastructure project we'd have entertained, it's necessary to seek the advice of entities that have done it before in many, many, many countries around the world, and bring that expertise to bear so that we can, and the decisions are ultimately our decisions, but we benefit from their advice. But to answer your question, NROC is absolutely essential and are the counterparts.
Thank you. Just conceptualizing this as a PPP, and you said it may be a government pays model, that would suggest then some special maintenance arrangement for this road involving paying a private entity to maintain the road. We have a national works agency that, subject to its funding, tries to maintain our national road network, our main roads. Why would we have a special maintenance arrangement here, separate and apart from what we have generally for our main road network? I mean, if it's just a two-lane highway from Mobay to Ochi, it doesn't sound particularly dramatic. It's just dualizing an existing road which now needs it.
Yeah, so under the general PPP modality, I was just given the extremes of that modality. But under the PPP modality, we invite a private sector firm to help design, build, construct, operate, and then transfer. You have modalities where it's a user pay PPP, and that's the modality that we have used in Jamaica so far. The Kingston Container Port, Sangster International Airport, Norman Manley International Airport are all user pay, a version of user pay PPPs. And in the process of those PPPs, the assets are maintained by the private entity. So whether it be they operate asset, yeah, and maintain it, right? So what I'm just describing for you is points on the spectrum where we can land up, where we can land. But certainly this is now beyond the scope of the procurement and the financing, but let me venture nonetheless since I'm on my feet. we benefit from having our major arteries under, specific, under the PPP arrangements that include the maintenance of them, right? We all benefit from that. But let's not speak too soon about it. We have the advisory we have to engage, they have to do environmental due diligence, social due diligence, financial due diligence, and then structure the transaction, have to get bidders, they have to bid, we have a process for that, you have a process for evaluating the bid, then you have to award. So we have a long way to go. And over the course of that time, we'll have opportunity to dialogue. The idea behind this, though, is engaging the international private sector, in this case, the international construction firms, to leveraging the stability and the economic foundations of Jamaica, to have the confidence to come here and engage in a major project and make a major commitment over a long period of time that helps us with our development. And that is the overarching purpose of this.
Just, Mr. Speaker, permit me to speak from a seat other than my own. What you have brought to the House is really to exempt IFC from the procurement rules. Now, when we reach to the process of selecting a contractor or private entity to partner with the government, is it at that point, or will there be another exemption of our local procurement rules in selecting that preferred bidder at the time?
So the idea here is that IFC is going to help us to construct an open and competitive process where it will be an open tender. The tender documents will be available. They'll be on websites. They'll be in international periodicals, I imagine, wherever these things are published. And we hope, and there'll be a road show where the government goes out and tries to sell Jamaica and sell the opportunity. And we hope that it will result in bidders from around the world, from our region, from our country, from our hemisphere, from Europe, from North America, from Asia. And so they will be, by definition, that is an open and competitive procurement. That's what we're setting up. The IFC, we're engaging IFC to help us to set up yes. That's that's a major graduation for us, given for Jamaica, given what we have relied on across administrations, and for reasons that we understand. But here we're saying that the sacrifice of Jamaicans that has led to an economy of increasing stability and soundness, these are the ways in which we benefit. Some of the ways in which we benefit, that we can, with confidence, go out and market a massive opportunity that's never been done at this size before, and people have the confidence that they can come here, they can invest, they can transact, they can build, and be comfortable that they will be paid.
In the matter of the other PPPs that you have mentioned, the airport, the container terminal, those entities that have invested in it, at least there is a revenue stream coming back to be able to pay for. In this matter, it is we're venturing on virgin territory in the sense that, if it is that you're looking at them managing that stretch of investment, maintaining, and as you have mentioned in the question to the member, that you're not considering a toll road for that. So there's not a revenue coming back. So in a sense, the government itself, from its own coffers, will have to pay back over a period of time for the investment that will be made. Just a suggestion that instead of coming to the House and announcing what has been decided, that when you have somewhat this, look at the various options, as we have, as the acting speaker is the chairman for the infrastructure committee, that it be brought to at least a committee of the parliament, that we can look at the different options also. Just a suggestion, you don't have to take it. Yeah? Because since we're going down virgin territory and knowing what the cost is, at least that a discussion could be had within the parliament itself on the way forward that we're going.
I hear you, and you know, we have opportunity to talk all the time. Some of that conversation is in this format. Some of it is in the corridors and in the aisles and so on. We'll have time to consider what you have said. But you know, the spirit is one where we share with you and you know, seek your comment and your support. For example, the member mentioned that I would have brought this to his attention late last week and sought his support and explained myself to him even before I came here today. So that spirit is a spirit that we will take with this.
Minister.
But yeah.
I'm listening to the response to the specific question asked by the member. And I just want to say that what I heard the member saying and what I'm supportive of is that to the point that you make, that this represents a new departure, a new opportunity for Jamaica on that scale, then he's inviting the Parliament to have a particular role in that through the committee system, because we have to build the capacity not just of the agencies of government, but of the Parliament itself. And he's asking that that be considered as part of that process going forward. That's the conversation I'm hearing. And you're talking about the informality of the discussion that you have with him from time to time in the corridors and elsewhere. So my point to you is, I think the issue is it not a time and a place and an opportunity for us to build into that system, not just the transparency of the tender process, but also of the governance process in the Parliament?
No, here, remember, I hear you, and look, that we're moving things in an entirely different direction. We don't bring, you know, we have arms of government that oversee procurement. We don't bring procurement matters before a committee, and we don't bring PPPs before a committee. Let us, you know, we are here. We are moving away from infrastructure procurement modality, highway infrastructure procurement modality, where we have had a tied relationship with the financing and the construction coming from one party in a government-to-government relationship. And we're graduating to a modality where we can, with the advice of multilateral partners, we can go out internationally and to the entire world and say, look, anybody who's interested, here's this project. Come and tell us what you could do it for and other specifications. Make sure you have the balance sheet, make sure you can get this done, and an objective scoring methodology chooses the person or the entity that is best suited to engage. I hear you on what you suggested. What I would say to you is that, you know, to the extent that you want to change the way in which government functions, there's a constitutional process that will begin, and we can look at some of these questions that I hear coming from this, we can discuss those if we want to change our governance arrangements. But the governance arrangements that we have and that have served us under previous administrations and under current administration is that PPPs and procurement, those are handled by the executive arms, NROC, DPJ, etc. And the process, there's a process, right?
It's not a matter of getting involved with the procurement. You're going into a different realm, unlike with others who came with their financing, we're secured work for Jamaican companies within that finance space. This is now at a different level that you're asking others to finance it and to do the work itself. Right? So even though that you have said that you have not decided on the modality, on how it is, what you're going to be using, it is important also that we protect also our own Jamaican companies locally. So you're talking about a different price of money, a different size of company. Where does the Jamaican companies also fit into that space, into a project like that? So that's all I'm saying. That conversation, that once you have decided on the modality, that we at least have that conversation on how we move forward. That's all I'm saying.
So, Madam Speaker, I think we have done more than what is truly expected in this particular matter brought before this Honourable House. This is really the requirement for affirmation of a policy with regards to procurement. We have sort of veered into discussing modalities that are far beyond what is even the scope of the measure that is before us. So it is true that it's an exception, but it is fair that we should allow the minister, exactly, and then when the matter is brought and a debate ensues, of course, no, certainly in terms of, when the arrangement is structured, but that's the object, that is the responsibility of the executive, and I think you appreciate that. Right, you appreciate that's the responsibility. So we don't want to derogate from the responsibility of the executive in this measure. And finally, we have allowed latitude in terms of the number of times members are allowed to make, Mr. Can you allow me, opposition business, can you allow me? Yes, I allow you, yes. We have allowed latitude in terms of the number of interventions members are allowed to make in these matters when it is not a statement by minister. A statement by minister allows for questions to follow, and even so is structured. So we have to retain the dignity of the Parliament in all its forms, and I appreciate the extent to which you have gone, but I would respectfully move, Mr. Speaker, that the member be allowed to close and the appropriate position taken. May it please you.
So, Mr. Speaker, I ask that the motion be put for affirmation.
Question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, last week I tabled the Trust and Corporate Services licensing and operations regulations, Madam Speaker, and I rise to open debate on it. It was tabled in the House last week on April 5th, 2022. Madam Speaker, this Honourable House may recall that the International Corporate and Trust Services Providers Act, which I'll refer to as the Act, was passed by both Houses of Parliament in 2017 and was assented to on August 18, 2017. The Act was promulgated to facilitate the establishment of a regulatory framework within which providers of international corporate and trust services could operate. Another key reason for the promulgation of the Act was to prevent the use of trust and corporate services providers, wittingly or unwittingly, for the conduct of money laundering, terrorism, financing, and proliferation financing. So this amendment here is part of our FATF obligations. This Honourable House may recall that the International Corporate and Trust Services Providers Change of Name and Amendment Act, which I refer to them as the Amendment Act, was passed in November 2021, and it amended the Principal Act and changed its name to the Trust and Corporate Services Providers Act. The Amendment Act, Madam Speaker, removed the distinction in treatment between international and domestic corporate and trust service providers by bringing domestic service providers under the ambit of the legislation, and by extension the regulatory and license regime to be established by the Trust and Corporate Services Providers Act. This amendment was necessary, Madam Speaker, as the Act only provided for the regulation of service providers who provided corporate and trust services to international entities. However, the Financial Action Task Force, otherwise known as FATF, through its 40 recommendations, requires that countries implement measures to ensure that the operations of all corporate and trust service providers, those who provide to international clients as well as those who provide to domestic clients, are not used to facilitate money laundering, terrorism financing, and the financing of the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. The Act, along with the Amendment Act, have, however, not yet been brought into effect, as these pieces of legislation were awaiting the development and promulgation of regulations. Madam Speaker, these regulations are being made pursuant to Section 47 of the Act. The Financial Services Commission, referred to in the Act as the Commission, has responsibility for the administration of the Act and is authorized by Section 47 to make regulations for such matters as may be expedient for the purposes of the Act, with the approval of the Minister responsible for finance and subject to affirmative resolution. Madam Speaker, I'll now do a clause-by-clause presentation of the specific provisions of the regulations. Regulation 1, Madam Speaker, sets out the title of the regulations, while Regulation 2, the interpretation section of these regulations, sets out the definitions of certain critical terms used throughout the regulations. Madam Speaker, Regulation 3 prescribes the documents and information which must be provided by an applicant for a license to provide trust, corporate, or trust and corporate services pursuant to Section 6 of the Act. It is to be noted that the documents and information required are extensive and are aimed at ensuring that fit and proper criteria are met, and that the applicant has also met such financial requirements as are prescribed and has the relevant professional competence to provide these services. Included in the requirements at Regulation 3, subparagraph 1c, is the provision of a policies and procedures manual, which would demonstrate that effective controls are to be implemented to protect licensees from the threat of money laundering, terrorism financing, proliferation financing, and other financial crimes, in accordance with the provisions under the Proceeds of Crimes Act, the Terrorism Prevention Act, the United Nations Security Council Resolution Implementation Act, and their attendant regulations. Regulation 4 provides that the Commission is to be informed whenever there is a change in the documents or information of an applicant, and of the date of such change no later than 5 days after such change has been made. Regulation 5 addresses the requirement for the establishment of a corporate governance framework for the licensee's business and sets out the matters which should be included in the framework, such as a conflict of interest policy and policies, procedures, and control mechanisms to prevent the inappropriate use of client money. Mr. Speaker, Regulation 6 provides for the appointment of an officer of the licensee to see to the implementation and monitoring of the corporate governance framework. Regulation 7 sets out matters relating to a change in the status of the licensee and the form and manner in which notices of such change should be given. This regulation sets out, in accordance with Section 12 of the Act, what constitutes a change in the status of the licensee, and includes, inter alia, any action which a licensee proposes to take which would result in a material change in its capital, adequacy, or solvency, and any change in the beneficial ownership of the licensee, as this will allow the Commission to, among other things, assess the fitness and propriety of such persons. Regulations 8 and 9 stipulate the requirements for the keeping of records by a licensed service provider, pursuant to Section 16 of the Act, and includes the keeping of a register of beneficial owners of clients of the licensee. It is to be noted, Mr. Speaker, that Regulation 9, Madam Speaker, paragraph 3, creates an offence as a licensee who includes false or misleading information in the register of beneficial owners is liable on summary conviction in a parish court to a fine for a person other than an individual, and in the case of an individual, to a fine or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 3 months. Regulation 10 provides that a licensee may outsource any of the services which the licensee provides. The licensee must, however, give the Commission 14 days notice of this in writing and is mandated to adhere to certain requirements before outsourcing such services. This is important, Madam Speaker, so that the regulator may make an assessment to ensure that this outsourcing does not hamper its ability to supervise the licensee. Any sub-outsourcing of the services without the written approval of the Commission is prohibited, and a breach of the provisions of Regulation 10 could result in fines or imprisonment or both. Pursuant to Regulation 11, Madam Speaker, a licensee is obligated to provide such documents and information, whether in a physical or electronic form, as may be requested by the Commission in relation to any customer or service provided by the licensee and within the timeline specified by the Commission. Regulation 12 stipulates that a trust service provider who enters into a business relationship, a one-off transaction, or any other agreement with a business in the regulated sector is obligated to inform the business that the licensee is acting in the capacity as a trustee and to comply with the request from a business in the regulated sector for information on the beneficial owner and any individual referred to in any document related to the trust. Regulation 13 provides that a licensee who breaches Regulations 11 or 12 commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to pay a fine if any company, or a fine or imprisonment if or both in the case of an individual. Madam Speaker, to aid the Commission in carrying out its supervisory responsibilities, Regulation 14 provides for the filing of reports or records by the licensee in the form and manner to be determined by the Commission. Importantly also, Madam Speaker, Regulation 15 speaks to the audit of the accounts of the licensee by an independent auditor pursuant to Section 17 of the Act, with the audit to include a review of such matters as may be specified by the Commission by notice published in the Gazette. It also provides that a report provided to the Commission by an independent auditor is not a contravention of the auditor's professional obligation to secrecy. Regulation 16 prescribes how monies held by the licensee on behalf of clients are to be kept and the procedures for the disbursement of client monies. This is an important safeguard mechanism, Madam Speaker, which ensures, among other things, that all accounts are held in the joint names of the licensee and the client, and that the client's bank accounts are to be reconciled promptly by the service provider. Madam Speaker, Regulation 17 specifies that a service provider will be liable for any loss or depreciation in the value of trust property resulting from a breach, as well as for any profit which would have accrued to the trust property had there been no breach. Regulation 18 sets out the documents that are to be furnished with an application to register a principal representative of a licensee. These documents are aimed at ensuring that fit and proper criteria are met by the prospective principal representative. Regulation 19 speaks to the requirement that all written notices of legal and other proceedings of a licensee required to be given pursuant to the Act are to be made in the form and manner to be determined by the Commission. Regulation 20 also states that where there will be a merger, takeover, or cessation of the operations of the business of a licensee, the written notice to be given to the Commission is to be in the form and manner and determined by the Commission. Such prescribed forms will serve the purpose of allowing the Commission to fulfill defined aims of the legislation. A licensee that intends to cease the operations of the business is to submit a written termination plan pursuant to guidelines issued under Section 46 of the Act, along with the notice. This will enable the Commission to be apprised of the arrangements that have been put in place for the transfer of clients' businesses to another service provider. Madam Speaker, Regulation 21 provides that the licensees are to have a professional indemnity insurance to cover the aggregate of at least 2 times the gross income or projected gross income of the licensee. Regulation 22 sets out the requirements for the licensee to file with the Commission on an annual basis a declaration of compliance in the time, form, and manner to be specified by the Commission. This, Madam Speaker, is a very important mechanism in the regulatory regime aimed at ensuring that all licensees are compliant and are operating their businesses in conformity with the Act and these regulations. Regulation 23 makes provision for the establishment of a fair and timely mechanism for the receipt, recording, and handling of all consumer complaints by the licensee. Finally, Madam Speaker, as has been mentioned throughout the regulations, the Commission may specify, pursuant to Regulation 24, the form and manner in which an application, statement, notice, return, or any other document required to be filed with the Commission is to be made. Such notice shall be published in the Gazette. In concluding, Madam Speaker, the affirmation of these regulations will allow an appointed day notice to be gazetted to bring into effect the Trust and Corporate Services Providers Act, the International Corporate and Trust Service Providers Change of Name and Amendment Act, as well as these regulations, and will allow for the establishment operationally of the regulatory and licensing regime for corporate and trust service providers. This will also enable Jamaica to comply with the requirements of the Financial Action Task Force for the regulation of trust and corporate service providers of both domestic and international clients. Madam Speaker, I now invite the support of the members of this Honourable House in affirming the Trust and Corporate Services Providers Licensing and Operations Regulations 2022.
Madam Speaker, Minister, this is not a controversial topic. These regulations are the third piece, I suppose, in this particular little puzzle. And it is quite puzzling because JIFSA, the Jamaica International Financial Services Authority Act, was brought into being really under Bruce Golding's government quite a long time ago. And at that time, it was heralded as a new day for a new industry in Jamaica of international financial services. And a lot of work then ensued to develop various components of the puzzle. Trust legislation, companies legislation, trust and corporate service providers legislation, partnership legislation, limited partnerships in particular, and other things. But nothing has really come of all this effort. And what's not clear to me is really what the government's strategy is now in relation to JIFSA and Jamaica being an international financial center. You know, a lot has changed in the international environment since those days, but given the amount of effort that has been made, an investment in the carrying costs of JIFSA over all these years, you know, what are we really doing? You know, this has really been a pandering exercise for the last few months to our attempt to come off the grey list and to meet our anti-money laundering and terrorism financing and weapons of mass destruction obligations, and to come out the naughty corner, so to speak. And there's more work to be done, and I know you're very committed to trying to get that done, and I commend you for that. But I'm just not seeing the overall strategy. I'm not hearing the overall strategy. I really don't know where all this is going. Is it going anywhere? Or has the government basically abandoned this project? There's a companies bill, very important piece of the puzzle, probably the most important piece of the puzzle, because of the centrality of companies to all transactions, business transactions, as a vehicle. And that was tabled by Minister Darrell Vaz when he was in another ministry. I had provided some comments to him offline, which I ended up dealing with JIFSA directly on that, and it hasn't come back. A year has passed, probably more than a year. And I just wonder whether it's going to come back. One important thing that that legislation would allow is the migration of companies to Jamaica, which currently is not possible under our companies legislation, and is an important thing that we need to encourage, because I think there's opportunities in that. But I don't know where we're going. So I'd just like, in your closing, we support the regulations, but I'd like in your closing if you could just give us some indication as to what the government's strategy is for the JIFSA and the panoply of legislation that has been enacted around JIFSA, of which these regulations are a very small part, but are necessary to bring into effect one of the components, which is the trust and corporate service providers piece. But they're all part of a bigger picture, and that picture is very fuzzy now, and I'd like to have some clarity from you on where we're going. Thank you.
So, Madam Speaker, one of the realities of government under any administration is that, you know, there are a portfolio of activities that are divided up, and sometimes they, you know, I am taking charge of the FATF, right, and under FATF, I need to make these kind of reforms, but GIFSA is somewhere else in government, and one of the unspoken rules is that you don't necessarily talk about things that are not in your shop. Okay. However, I can speak to it from the point of view of FATF to sort of shed some light. That we know that okay. So you know, I give you a historical fact. I gave a historical fact, right, that when Jamaica announced that we were going to do this international financial center, first of all, the world changed dramatically in the last 15 years. The time for those offshore centers and so on has long passed, and we missed that boat. That's not to say we can't offer things. But as a historical fact, I'll just share with you that when Jamaica made that announcement in 2008, that was when the OECD knocked on our door and said, you know, the Global Forum for Transparency and Harmful Tax Practices, by the way, you need to come here and let me review your apparatus. Because what had happened is they had called all the other countries in the region who had these centers, Barbados and Cayman and Bahamas and St. Lucia, etc. They went to a meeting in Mexico. And the country said, I am told, wait a minute, how come Jamaica not here? You know, see, Jamaica just announced, right? And that got us caught up in 10 years of review and we've made a lot of progress, and you've seen a lot of the legislation that's come through here, and Jamaica is a leader now in the area of being compliant in our international arrangements in that area. So I say that to say that the strategy today is definitely different from what the strategy would have been when it was announced. And we have to just make sure that whatever we do is compliant with the regime today. So I recall a few months ago, the Prime Minister brought a bill on LLCs, or spoke to, right. We have to make sure that when that comes through, right, we're doing this reform with beneficial ownership in the Companies Act, right. Right. If we're going to bring an LLC legislation on the GIFSA, we have to make sure that the beneficial ownership disclosures that are consistent with FATF standards are embedded. So everything has to go. Yes. No. Right. So let me stick to. What I am doing here today is trying to ensure that we are compliant with our FATF standards, and that our arrangements don't, meet with the approval of the treaties and the agreements that we are signatories to. We will continue to develop other areas, but we have to develop them in a way that is compatible. With respect to we'll do some other things though under the Income Tax Act that will help, right? A lot. But in due course, we have opportunity to talk about them. But I understand your point of view. But please bear in mind that the world today is very, very different from 2007. Yeah. Yes. Madam Speaker, I move that the regulations be adopted by way of I believe that I ask that the motion be approved.
The question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business today. However, Madam Speaker, just before the motion of adjournment, I'd just like to inform the House with regards to the sitting that is intended to take place, the joint sitting of both houses on Thursday at 2 p.m., at which time the House will be addressed by the visiting head of state from Rwanda. President of Rwanda would be here. And we are requiring members to be present in their seats by 1:45 p.m. so that the House can in fact commence punctually at 2, as we have always been doing. There will be some other fanfare and florries and so on, the usual ceremonials that are connected with heads of state visiting and speaking to our parliament. So we urge members indeed to be on time, and we certainly would like to have a full house in order to pay respect to our visiting head of state. Madam Speaker, I now invite you to adjourn the House for a date to be fixed.
The question is that the House do adjourn for a date to be adjourned, with the exception of the joint sitting of Parliament, which will take place on Thursday, the 14th. And I don't want to say at 2 o'clock, I want to say at 1:45 when we're all seated, so that we may start the sitting at 2 p.m. And the House sittings will be adjourned, there are regular House sittings, for a date to be adjourned. With the exception of the special sitting, I said, the joint sitting, I said that, of the Parliament on Thursday, when we expect all our members to be seated by 1:45 so that we may start promptly at 2 p.m. This House is now adjourned.